By the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
7:30 Friday morning. Very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM. Adrian with you. Owen, how are you doing?
Very well, Adrian. What's the crack?
Colm, good morning to you.
Lads, how are we?
How's the coffee?
It's actually water. I finished my coffee. I'm back to 2 coffees a day though.
Right.
With this new gig.
One
These
first
early
thing.
starts.
One first thing, and then would you be a bit of a Pat Kenny man? He likes to get the won't drink coffee after 12 o'clock.
Pat Kenny is the first man who spoke to me when I started in this job 3 years ago. He was brave. He was the only man who came out. I was in the kitchen ready for coffee, and who was there but Mr. Kenny himself? And
he does like a little.
We had small talk over coffee.
What did he talk about?
Coffee.
Oh, sorry, the subject was coffee.
The actual subject was coffee while we were waiting for the coffee. And I never forget that. Like, there was no sign of Adrian Barry. Sheahan kept his head down. But Pat Kenny came over and introduced himself and welcomed me.
That's pretty true to form with all of our personalities, I think.
Well,
It said so much about off the ball and news talk at large.
no, I think it says a lot about Pat Kenny.
Yeah. The type of people that they attract.
I've had great
Be more of
conversations
that.
with him about the milk to coffee ratio. You can only imagine how
Probably
excited
hear
he
us like right now.
He's just outside there. We should bring in Owen, of course, our resident Pat
He's
Kenny
in today.
correspondent.
Yeah, exactly. You can hear me later on, shooting the breeze.
We've a lot to get to, and we've a packed show as always. But the first thing I wanted to touch on, we're not going to linger on it, but West Ham's exit from the Europa League last night, and I do note that they were been spoken about, and we'll talk about the media. We love nothing the media love more than talking about the media. We talk a bit more about that, particularly in the context of the BT coverage of the Man City game during the week. But everybody was saying that West Ham, their name was when the name was on the trophy, and they might have bought into that a little bit themselves. But David Moyes' actions during and after the game last night were. People may not be overly familiar with it, but it was about 15 minutes to go in the game, and he was urgently trying to get the ball back, and ball boy delayed throwing it back to him, and then, as he said afterwards, left it short, and then Moyes volleys the ball back in the direction of the ball boy. Now misses him, happily for all, but gets a red card and storms off. And then in the press conference afterwards, sort of apologises for it while adding in, well, it was coming at me on the volley. Now, he didn't break a smile, but I mean, he's trying to crack a gag, and I just thought it was poor form. If you're going to get a red card for that and you're going to apologise for something, then don't try and add in the joke for somebody, of course, who was a bit of form in this area over the last little while with stuff, obviously the Kurt Zouma cat stuff, and then people are familiar, it was about 5-6 years ago where he had threatened a female reporter from the BBC, I think, that with physical violence basically after an interview that he didn't appreciate a question. And he's building up a bit of a reputation for himself, including when asked about the Aaron Cresswell sending off, which I don't know if people saw it, but it was, without going into the detail of it, a fairly stonewall red card, which everybody seemed to accept. Except for David Moyes, who said about the sending off, well, he made the referee make a decision. Like, co-managers, do you remember Pep about, was it 5 or 6 weeks ago, was talking about Kyle Walker? Do you remember that? And he was saying, he was fuming with Kyle Walker and saying, this is, Kyle Walker should have known better. Can you not just, you don't need to be thrown or create conflict with your player, but could you not just come out and go, yeah, it was a sending off and he shouldn't have done it?
In David Moyes' defence, well, possible defence here, in that Pep Guardiola Kyle Walker example, had Manchester City won the match.
Yeah, but this was not a few weeks ago. This was before Christmas. This is the last stage of the group stage of the Champions League, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, my argument is it a bit easier to be magnanimous when you won, whereas Moyes, really believed that West Ham could get to the final, and he's just absolutely furious here, and he wants to defend his players as best he can. He's quite defensive anyway. Ever since the Manchester United stint, he's quite defensive when he talks to the media.
And also, I think it was the stupidity of the Walker red card, and also you've got next man up with regards to Manchester City, who's probably going to be I say that now. The Kyle Walker's absence after a while the other night possibly cost him. I was going to say next man up is just going to be just as good compared to, say, who the next man up would be for Cresswell for West Ham. I don't know. I think that part of it is understandable. He is the West Ham manager. West Ham player gets sent off. You're going to be annoyed. I don't think that's...
I think he could be annoyed by also accepting... What point does he not accept... It was a very obvious red card. Very obvious red card. Like, at what point do you just say, at what point do you not have to put your hands up and just go, listen?
Probably today, tomorrow, when he actually gets over it. Like, that's probably the stage he gets to. Like, we got to accept it. Like, these are heated situations that managers are in the aftermath of football matches. Like this was a huge night for West Ham, a huge night for David Moyes. In a couple of seasons that have been really positive for him, getting to a Europa League final would have been massive for David Moyes. And like he's obviously, you know, he's in sour form after that, as a lot of people would have been.
But just on Moyes, much maligned obviously until this second West Ham stint. And I remember at the start of his second reign, I think it was his unveiling press conference, when he described himself as a serial winner. And he said, that's what I do, I win. And everybody laughed. And sure, we were probably in here the next morning talking about that at the top of the show, about how dare this guy say that after his first stint at West Ham, Sunderland, Real Sociedad, so on, and Manchester United, of course. But, you know, I think we're all in agreement that he's done an absolutely phenomenal job and hasn't helped himself with the Kurt Zouma cat stand, you know, playing Zouma immediately afterwards and saying, well, he's one of our best defenders, so he has to play, and totally ignoring the issue at hand. And then last night, you know, smacking the ball point blank range of the ball boy. So, you know, that kind of turns you against him a bit. But I have to say, like, I felt very sorry for what happened at United. Don't think he should have got the job in the first place, but he spent a whole decade just receiving constant abuse.
He's also a bit deluded, but
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, operating at that level, you probably need to have a little bit of delusion, don't you?
I have mixed feelings about him, yeah. I can see both sides of the argument about Moyes.
One of the other things was we didn't get a huge amount of time to talk about it yesterday, the Man City fallout, I suppose, and, you know, talking to people through the day yesterday on various calls, and, you know, the hot topic of where you watched them, like what platform you were watching the game on, and like how that coverage went. But the thing that like sort of jumped out to me was the I was watching on BT. I purely wanted to hear the English commentary of the English game to see, you know, what the reaction would be. And it was grand. Like, I mean, there were 20-30 minutes out, they were talking about City fans needing to get online and book their tickets because there's going to be a rush out of the north of England and you need to get your tickets booked. But yeah, 88 minutes, Darren Fletcher said, you know, the Madrid fans around us are leaving. No, he wasn't saying it by way of, isn't this sort of disgraceful or whatever. It was saying they were all very accepting that City were going to win the game. And I just felt that, you know, at that point, there was 2 minutes of normal time left. There was whatever the referee was going to add on, right? Like, at least 3-4 minutes. There was, and it was 6 minutes in the end, something like that. There was, in my mind at that point, at least 6 minutes of all the teams that you could possibly support in any code on the planet. If you're a Real Madrid fan and there's 6 minutes of time left, you've got to get 2 goals. Sit tight. There is really no requirement to be leaving the stadium. Like, you know, I was at the All-Ireland final last year and, you know, there was plenty of Mayo fans streaming out before the end. I wouldn't do it myself, but I do understand some of that. The game was over and you ain't coming back.
And traffic is worse in Dublin compared to
traffic
Madrid, famously.
Famously, around Drumcondra. It's bad. But I just thought, oh, lads, like, sit tight. Sit tight.
Yeah.
Madrid, if you've been watching your team at all for any period of time, there's a chance they might score here.
I played devil's advocate for the Real Madrid fans. Champions League, holy grail for them, obviously, right? No debate there. They won the league title at a canter, no problem. Great stuff for Carlo Ancelotti, winning in all 5 big leagues, brilliant. But really, the fans care about the Champions League. Up until the 90th minute and Rodrigo's first goal, they hadn't had a shot on target. I guess a lot of the Madrid fans were like, F this, I'm gone. This has been an absolutely disastrous night. Having said that, leaving with minutes to spare in the Champions League semi-final second leg, it must be a pretty luxurious life if you have that option, that you were like, I'm just going to leave. You know, this isn't for me. This isn't entertaining me enough. Not enough content.
The video outside the ground I just spotted there, obviously Marca, and I think a couple of other platforms in Spain were videoing the fans trying to get back in, and somebody's put English subtitles on it, and one of the guys was like, I spent €250 on a ticket, I'm from Barcelona and I make one trip to the Bernabeu every year. Like, I mean, if you are that person, I guess leaving is probably not a wise move, but I applaud these people for knowing that there's cameras around them and still having, you know, the gumption to walk back up to the stewards and beg to get back in. If I'd walked out, I would have kept the head down, keep walking towards the train station or towards my car.
You couldn't walk back to your seat, could you? Imagine the embarrassment of that.
Not. I would stand in the concourse and peek out.
Fletch, as I'm now calling him, did point out a little bit later on that some fans had seemed to have come back into the ground, come back into their seats. Like, had they reached the bowels, some of them reached the bowels of the stadium and suddenly heard this like guttural roar and thought, oof.
Once you leave, you can't come back.
Yeah, but they hadn't left the stadium.
Oh yeah, so they were just about to step out.
A lot of them, I
heard
would
this
say.
and came back around.
I'm
yeah.
sure, I'm sure it was a good few.
There was a prominent fan who was sitting on the footpath, and he played the role beautifully, perfectly of
He's devastated.
a devastated fan. He was absolutely brilliant, and there was strewn cans and cups around him, like that scene in Father Ted when they're practicing for the Song for Europe, and like he played the role of Ted.
Once you walk out that
I know
door,
who Dougal was.
it makes it hard to celebrate the win. Doesn't it? Like if you put yourself in the because you're devastated at having walked out. You've created a bad story for you for life.
What about the people half-time May 2005 Istanbul?
Yeah.
What about those people who walked away?
Traffic in Istanbul is very bad though. Like, I mean, if you want to get back to Liverpool, but like, so what's the first thing you think if like your team has a massive success and you're not there? Is God, I wish I was there. Or say with Katie Taylor on Saturday night, I wish I was there. The only thing that could make that worse is I was there,
And I left.
but I missed a good bit.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you a man for leaving early, Adrian?
I'd say you are.
No, I'm not.
You
I'm
definitely-
not.
you
I have,
definitely-
I feel like
fella
you have
who-
better things to be doing.
Yes,
I have scar tissue.
You're a man of content.
You are an
scarred.
early leaver.
I'm scared. The only reason I believe in is that the few glasses of red wine, and I'm looking to get a top up somewhere. And generally, Leinster have beaten the opposition at the gap, and it's like this is done anyway. Is that what we're saying here?
And it's hard to get a cheese board.
It is very hard to get a cheese board. I have scar tissue from as a kid when my dad. So we'd go to Croke Park. Being from Westmeath, there wasn't ever a huge amount of reason to go to Croke Park to support our own
That's go
country.
like twice.
But having parents from Galway and Mayo, you got plenty of opportunity to go up and support various teams. And was at like epic games and like lots of games. My dad would have had like a 10-year ticket, so you'd be going in rotation on a fairly regular basis. And we were absolutely that family with the can of sweet tea outside and the sandwiches wrapped up in the tinfoil. We were absolutely that team. And we were in we were like, we would be one of the first people queuing at the gate when they opened the gates. And like I'm old enough to be one of those that was like thrown over the turnstiles type of an effort, and it was like a glorious experience in hindsight. And there was never any great whinging or roaring about it. So we'd be there like you could be there 45 minutes before the minor game started. I remember meeting Micheál O'Hare. We were there that early one day. It would have been after he retired. So, a slight tangent here. After he'd retired and he was sat in the stand before the games began, and my father was like, "Here, come on over and meet. I have a fellow over here to meet you." And my dad would be kind of like that anyway. So I just thought, here's some. Who's this fella? Like, what am I doing here? And it was Micheál O'Hare.
If only he could see you
soaking
now.
up the atmosphere in the game. I know he'd be like, what an embarrassment he is to my industry. But yeah, so we would do that. We would then leave, and I'm not exaggerating here, on a regular basis, 10 or 15 minutes into the second half.
And that would be considered a good day out.
To beat the traffic. There would never be. I'm fairly sure. I'd have to talk. I must ask him about it. I'm fairly sure my brother missed the Seamus Darby goal, having gone home. Like, but can I just say as well, there was never any sense watching the Sunday game back or whatever it might have been, talking about it the week after. Nobody ever went, "Oh, wasn't that terrible that we missed that thing?" Like my father would still tell you about like the great escape that he made from Croke Park on numerous occasions to beat the traffic.
Equals All Ireland victory.
Yeah.
Wow.
So sorry. The point being, no, I don't. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but where at all possible, I will stay until the end.
Imagine that in the modern day, 2 counties and somebody shows up, not even from those counties, takes a genuine fan's ticket and doesn't even stay till the end, till the most like a genuine
fan.
Offaly man or woman was left outside. That's the stadium.
Well, no, my father had like a 10-year ticket or whatever, so we were legitimate to be there. He had a bigger commitment to this than the Johnny come latelys that you're talking about on that don't turn up for the league. Not even there at the early stage. It's a championship, so I don't feel
never
bad
leave
about that
early
front.
is. I think it's.
I think it's a good lesson.
I think
What would you?
Have you left early?
No, the only time I left early was just because we were in Portugal at a Benfica game, and we kind of realised too late that the beer was non-alcoholic, so we were bitterly disappointed. We were like, just have to leave.
How long was left?
Like 45 minutes.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, I remember this.
Half-time.
This was a.
Didn't pay for the ticket.
He's not giving you the full story here.
Didn't pay for the ticket.
Do you know the thing is, Colm, right? The thing I'll say about this is that I get such a reputation here for the having the glass of wine and the little bit of cheese, or whatever. Like
Yeah.
over in the we're literally in the posh seats, the prawn sandwich brigade.
We were not in the posh.
Couldn't
there
even.
too?
No. Couldn't even hang around for the second half of a Champions League match while being treated to the finest of hospitality. Could you imagine?
It was like we just done a hard day's work, and it was like we need to go into town.
Do you know when you realised it was non-alcoholic beer? Was that because you just saw it, the percentage, or that you just weren't getting any buzz off it for the first half?
No, I saw the percentage, and I think I can't quite remember.
Was this with colleagues of ours?
Yeah,
It was, absolutely.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, I know the crew.
And it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't my decision to leave at half time.
I know whose decision it was.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know exactly whose decision it was.
I wouldn't. I've kind of been trained the other way. I've been like leaving early is just a bit of a crime.
Before we move on, because we need to acknowledge that we've a Cork and a Kerry person in the studio this morning, I must read a couple of the comments. Dara, and good morning to you, says to think that Adrian referred to one of his parents' counties as a team of eunuchs just makes it all the more baffling. And thank you for Dara for, in the grand tradition of OTB AM, entirely
misrepresenting my point.
What was said.
Here we go. That's
Wasn't
a
it? It was misrepresented.
You should
Come
have
on
like
now.
a hotkey for every time Adrian says.
It was
something
Oisin
which
Mullen
represents the
and Killian that were out, wasn't it? And the point was that they were missing their two.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
The point was that Mayo are always in and around it, like Varys is, but never actually.
That day, that context of that, they were. And also, let me reiterate the point about how warmly thought of Varys is. He's one of the finest characters in the land. But thanks, Dara, for reminding us of all of that. And then Brian Dillon said that he missed the Brian Murphy goal in '98 for Kildare against Meath in the Leinster final. Last kick of the game. I heard it happen because we just walked up the steps of the Cusack, had to milk the cows. Unforgivable.
But that is forgivable. That, like, in fairness.
Would the cows not
They're
have waited? Would they be bursting at the seams?
They're not gonna
Anybody
milk
familiar
themselves.
with this area? No?
That's bursting at the
no.
seams, but like that's the problem.
Why did Brian go to the game if the cows had to be milked?
Well, I suppose he
What
was
happened there?
hopeful that they
Well, it
were-
was 1998, so there's no quick text to be like,
Yeah.
will you milk cows? Match class, can't leave.
But all those people were at
Emojis.
the game as well. No, I
Cows
can
in a
appreciate
glass
that.
of milk.
Cows to be milked is the only acceptable excuse. How, like, is there a big dairy sort of industry in the outer Madrid areas? Is that one of the reasons why there was such an exodus on Wednesday night? We can't possibly speculate.
And then Brian on Twitter says Istanbul was in the middle of nowhere. I'd say only a small handful left at half time. If
And
it
they
even
did,
took
yeah.
hours to get to the stadium from the city.
I heard one or two stories of Liverpool fans leaving, but I was thinking, if they're going all the way to Istanbul, like, where are they even going to?
Well, that's the thing.
Do you know what I mean? At half time. The nearest pub, I suppose. Getting quite a
So
few in here, actually.
it's one-way traffic this weekend. Everything goes with form. We were just discussing before getting there about the rivalry versus competitiveness, which there doesn't feel to be much at the minute for Cork Kerry.
No, I do think it's going to be more competitive because it's in Páirc Uí Rinn. Ronan McCarthy, he was speaking to the Examiner, and he thinks that Cork could run him to 6 points this weekend. And I think if that's the case, I think Cork will be happy enough with that. But I also think Kerry are happy enough for this game to be played in
So
Páirc Uí Rinn.
patronising.
Yeah, it is. But like,
unbelievable.
how can you not be like if you're actually calling this as you see it? Like, I mean, they got absolutely done a couple of years ago, which is always a danger. But I think that when you're bringing that into proceedings, you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, how does that factor into tomorrow? And it's like, okay, well, it could possibly be a close game. And I think is that not the best that Cork can hope for? Maybe not. Maybe it will be a famous night and Cork will
Remember
win.
when we debuted the time capsule on Off the Ball, and I'll bring you back to it was November 2020. That
Yeah.
was a great night.
Oh, like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think you were just mentioning it. I was just saying, just in case you hadn't mentioned,
Yeah.
that was great. Now
It was.
memorable.
yeah.
You remember Luke Connolly skied it. The ball was in the air for about 5 or 6
Yeah.
seconds, and then
You'll never forget it.
ecstasy
Well,
ensued.
I would have been interested last year in what the turnout at Fitzgerald Stadium would have been had there been no COVID or had there been a full crowd allowed. Because I found a lot of the talk around this Páirc Uí Rinn situation and the build up to it has been like, one of the arguments that kind of annoyed me was, sure, nobody cares about this rivalry anymore. Nobody would show up to the game. I'm not actually sure that's true. I would have liked to have seen what a turnout in Killarney would have been for this. That's not to say that the game should be played in Killarney, but I think that maybe people think that this rivalry or this rivalry is deader than it really is. Basically, competitiveness and rivalry, as you said, are completely different things. Like, if you go back to the last time Cork and Kerry played in Killarney in the championship in a non-COVID year, over I think almost 32,000 people showed up. That was 2017. Cork finished 4th in Division 2 that year. They finished 6th in Division 2 this year. They weren't a million miles away. So I still think that there is a huge interest in showing up to this fixture. There isn't just huge expectation. There's no expectation, I think, from Cork's perspective at all. I think the fact that it's played in a ground that they've never played against in Championship makes this more interesting than it would have been. But we can't pretend and say we're overly excited for this as a contest. Like, there will be egg on everybody's face if Cork win this game. There's no question about it.
What margin of victory would disappoint you as a Kerry fan?
I mean, what's the handicap? Like, I mean, if Ronan McCarthy's saying 6 points, I don't know.
I think it's more than that.
I think I'd put 8. I think Kerry needs to be targeting a 6 to 8 point win.
And you can add on if you want to that, given the source that it's coming from. Are you basically calling out Cork fans for not supporting the team when it's unlikely that they'll win?
literally the opposite thing is what I just said. It's like almost 32,000 people showed up to Killarney when Cork were a Division 2 team. They were still a Division 2 team. They finished 2 places below where they finished in 2017. They've still just got as much of an outside chance winning the All-Ireland this year as they had in 2017, in my opinion. In fact, I would say they've got a more outside chance, or had a more outside chance in 2017 because Dublin were at the peak of their powers at that point. So no, it's the exact opposite. I think that I'm not sure what the crowd would have
patronising.
Well, actually, look, the Honourable Mick Foley was on the show last night with Nathan and Sarah O'Donovan, and he was saying, look, football. He's very disappointed with their hurlers, but he said football-wise, like, it's okay. The future is actually quite bright in football side. This is kind of the class of the under-20s coming through. It's a development year, and next year he reckons that they'll be a lot better. There's less concern in the football side than the hurling side, which is a disaster at the moment.
Because I was looking, like, when you kind of chart that rivalry, like, I'm not sure, Colm, what you think the peak of the rivalry would have been, but just because it's 20 years, I was kind of thinking about the 2002 match, which was a 2-game saga between Kerry and Cork. The day Ireland lost to Spain in the World Cup, there was an absolute, it was just a monsoon in Killarney. I think it was 8 points apiece between Kerry and Cork, and that had just around 30,000 people at that game. The rain might have been a factor in it, but they played each other later on that year in Croke Park in an All-Ireland semi-final. These were two of the best teams in the country, and still in 2017 you had more people show up for a Kerry-Cork game, and one of those teams was not a contender at all. So the overall point in a very long-winded way is that I think this rivalry and the interest in it is more alive than people think, and I just would have been interested to see what the non-COVID reaction would have been last year after Mark Keane's knock-on effect the previous year.
Well, Adrian, you're actually the person to go to here. That match is a bottleneck of great sport on this weekend, Saturday evening. So you have Munster Toulouse. I think just before that is Leicester Leinster's first, and then if you're of the Manchester United variety, they're away to Brighton and Hove Albion at the same time as this Cork Kerry match. What would you have one screen? Are you watching Cork Kerry? Do you have any interest in this, knowing the fact that this is 99% certain going to be a Kerry victory? Do you have any interest in this?
What time is it at?
I think it's
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, yeah, which is just around the time that Munster.
I'll be watching the rugby.
No, Munster's on at 4.
Oh, is it Leinster on at the same time? There is a way to find out, but there's a bottleneck.
Yeah, Leinster's on at the same time.
That's okay, so that's you gone. All right,
that will be me gone indefinitely. And if it was Munster, I'd be watching them as well. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely the sort of game that there's a few points in it later on, and you're like, oh, there's a bit of interest here. You might try and second screen, or you might flip over, but no, I think
if there was nothing else on,
no, I definitely watch it. No question.
What?
No question.
Okay, just to see how much Kerry will win by, is it?
I got Kenny the dad, good morning to you, Kenny. I got a posh seat freebie at a New York Mets game. I had an electronic panel in front of me that could order beer, pretzels, hot dogs, etc. for free. I left at the bottom of the 7th. Don't know what I missed, and I don't care either. Bernard Lawless, I was at the England-Scotland 30-38 draw, and my friend who was Scottish wanted to leave at 31-5 to England at half-time. Never leave early. I think that's just, it's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Right.
Shame on you, Adrian.
I don't think I've left early. Don't think I have.
No, you wouldn't be the sort. You would hate if somebody caught you leaving early. That would be
no.
Be the act of actually leaving early. It'd be somebody seeing you.
No one would care if I left early. But you never know what you might see. Do you know, when the game is dead, actually, it often brings out the best in certain people.
Well, one of these many people who's now coming up to you since you started appearing here saying, "Are you man from off the ball?" You'd hate to be caught on.
But I don't think it would ever happen. It might happen for you too. Not for me.
7:53. It's Friday morning, and you're watching OTB AM. If you've just joined us, welcome along. We're chatting all things rivalry. I had a Cork Kerry obviously this weekend, and plenty of the other action as well. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up on the show over the course this morning. We're going to talk to Brid Stack in a couple of moments' time. That Cork Kerry game will be top of the agenda there with Brid in just a couple of moments. The quick picks then ahead of the weekend. We'll have Will and Aisling on the line to join myself and Eoin to get stuck into, I think we've 5 matches to make our picks ahead of this weekend. The sports pages, let you know what's happening there at 25 to 9 this morning. The sports news at 20 to 9. Ronan O'Gara live on the line from La Rochelle at 10 to 9 this morning. An unbelievably interesting weekend, obviously, of Heineken Champions Cup action and events at Munster as well. So plenty to talk to Ronan about. And as I said, he is live, so if you have any thoughts or questions for him ahead of that slot, do fire them into us. Live crappy quiz, myself versus Will versus Mick. Nathan is not back. No, Mick won it last week. He's back to defend his crown at 10 past 9. Weird rounds, I'm assured, coming away again. And then, as Colm mentioned, some Cork GAA chat from the show last night at 9:30 this morning. So that is what is coming away. Do get in contact with us wherever it is you're consuming us this morning. Up next, as I said, we're going to be talking to the Cork legend Brid Stack to talk football. First of all, Mick Foley on why the Cork hurlers simply don't work enough.
This is the thing as well with Cork, and I'm not making excuses for them, but there was a little bit of a kerfuffle about Cork, not the All-Star situation last year with Cork, and they probably didn't benefit from playing Limerick so often last year, and to start off again then against Limerick this time around. On one level, it was a good yardstick to see where they were at compared to last year, but on another level, if it went wrong like it did, it really throws them back. But I do think there's one more issue to that physicality aspect, and it's connected to another issue around Cork, which would be work rate. I would be fairly confident in saying that there are a number of players on that panel that just are not putting it in physically. They're not doing the work. And that's not to say, they should be pilloried for that. They seem to have made a choice that they're just not going to put it in.
Mick, when you say that, because look, that in a way is as big a criticism, as big an accusation you can make around any player. When you say the work rate, do you feel that's in the off-season, in training sessions, or do you feel it's just when they get on the pitch?
Well, I know that there are a couple of players that they have to work extremely hard on to get them to do the physical work, like basically the gym stuff. I mean, all you have to do is take off your top, and let's have stand them up beside a Limerick guy, and you'll see, and I mean, unfortunately, there are a couple like that just have not put in the work.
And is that not a failure of coaching, in that if there's players like that, why are they in the squad?
I think you can put together all the structures in the world. You can put the best coaches in there in the world. If a player has decided that he's going to do so much but not everything, what are you going to do? And there's a lot of guys. I mean, and this is, you can play around with it all you want, but there was a lot of talk within Cork and beyond Cork that it was a number of guys playing for their careers in the last couple of matches, and you see the outcome. So there is clearly an issue there around the attitude within the squad, that's what I'm talking about, leadership. The leadership within the playing group, and then the ability of the management to connect with the players to bring the whole thing together. And again, I mean, you say it's a big criticism. It's a criticism. I don't think it's unfair. I mean, one of the things that has been said about over the previous two games is that they're just getting blown out of it. I mean, there's been criticism of them struggling on their puck outs. There's been criticism of not putting the work. Like, work rate is not just a thing this year. I mean, there's been statistical analyses done over the last bunch of years to show that Cork, of the elite counties playing the Liam McCarthy Championship, are among the teams that are at the lower end of that scale.
Good stuff there from Mick Foley, the Sunday Times, last night, talking about the malaise of Cork hurling as they look set to miss out and getting out of the Munster group in the hurling championship this year. It's not been amazing for the footballers either over the last little while, and to that end we are joined by Cork legend Brid Stack ahead of their game against Kerry tomorrow. Brid, good morning to you. How are you getting on? Is there more of a sense of worry around the small ball or the big ball at the moment when it comes to proceedings in Cork GAA?
Well, we'll certainly know after this weekend anyway. But I suppose, look, it's probably been a disappointing, Cork hurling outlet there, I suppose, the last day. But look, you can look back at this 5-year plan that was projected, and certainly from a football point of view, there's been a bit more positives in terms of, I suppose, club success and underage success, but definitely a lot more to do from the football side of things. But yeah, look, I suppose, the hurlers always get a massive following, always get a huge, there's always, I suppose, great excitement that, this could be the year. And look, unfortunately, they just seem to be just that pitch below at the moment, especially in Munster.
That 5-year plan is interesting. So 2019, they published that hashtag 2024. Yeah. One of the bullet points in that was Cork will be regular All-Ireland contenders in all grades of inter-county football within 3 to 5 years. You'd have to say that's probably been kicked down the road a little bit? Look, I suppose, you have to take the club side of things at its merit. There's definitely been massive advancements in the club structures and side of things. It's led to massively more competitive Cork structure.
which is, it has to be good for the game. Players are playing at the grade that they are at, which leads to player retention. It leads to player enjoyment, and I suppose it leads to teams improving and a steady improvement. And maybe we might see it. We might not see it before this 5-year plan is up, but certainly there's great progress happening at club level with Cork. And I suppose you just have to look at the league. I suppose debutants there was this year. I know a lot of them were due to necessity, due to injury, but there was definitely a lot of club players that stepped up, and that's because they're playing at a level I suppose where they're getting seen, getting noticed. They're playing at a level that they're very comfortable at, and that they can see improvement in. So from the Cork club structure point of view, it has been brilliant, and obviously the Bar is doing as well as they have. So that's obviously a huge plus. The underage obviously has done very well, but I suppose for me, there's still just that massive missing link between the underage stepping up to senior, and I suppose you definitely would have to question physically where Cork are at the moment. And for me, I just feel like that there is that massive missing link between the S&C step up between that underage and seniors, just in comparison to our intercounty counterparts. It's frightening how much I suppose even Kerry have advanced even in the last couple of years, and that I suppose there's just not that continuity there at the moment with Cork.
That's really interesting, because that's essentially what Mick Foley was earmarking as one of the real problems with Cork hurling at the moment. So it's obviously something that if they manage to get this right, it'll benefit both codes. Yeah,
and like I said, I just think continuity is a massive thing, especially I suppose for young lads trying to bridge that gap. And in Cork there's definitely been a lot of toing and froing with different S&C coaches over the last couple of years. So I just think maybe this could be the start of it now with Keith Ricken coming in and, hopefully getting a bit of momentum going. But I suppose, there has been a lot of kind of uncertainty and, like I said, just lack of consistency for players and managements alike going forward the last couple of years. But I suppose you can only try to look at the positives as much as possible. And, the positives are, club structure is going well. Hopefully that obviously spills over onto intercounty like it did for Derry. Like Derry obviously has great club structures, and now they're hopefully reaping the rewards of it. So I suppose we're obviously very impatient and want to see Cork back where they were and want to see this rivalry back where it was. So obviously we may just have to wait another couple of years.
That continuity and consistency piece, that was something that Ronan McCarthy touched on in that Examiner conversation that I mentioned earlier on. He said from a Cork point of view, it is time to burn the boats, if I could use that phrase, and he's talking about dual players here. So he said the message we gave to players from my time from 2018 on was, if you go, you're not coming back. That seems like a very honourable thing. And you look at someone like Aidan Walsh, for example, who was obviously an all-star in 2010, such an amazing footballer. To burn that boat, I'd say, is almost easier said than done sometimes if a player of that quality goes to play with the hurlers and then wants to come back to play football. I would suggest it would take a brave enough Cork manager to say, no, you're not coming back. But you have to say fair play as well, that this is the mentality that McCarthy wants to see.
Yeah, and look, obviously he was involved, and he probably had plenty head scratching going on as well when he was potentially losing players to hurling. And I suppose, that's the massive problem that Cork have, as a dual county and dual senior county, that it's very, very hard to make sure that you keep players in one code. Obviously, a lot of these lads are playing dual clubs, so you're always going to have a little bit of a graw since you were young, playing both codes. So it's very, very hard sometimes maybe to make that complete cut off in one code. And I suppose from the Cork footballers' point of view, maybe the hurling has been that little bit more appealing in the last couple of years. So, you're losing the likes of, Damien Cahalane, who was a fine footballer, like Aidan Walsh, who you mentioned, 2-time All-Star, lost to hurling. And then I suppose even more recently, you just have to look to Mark Keane. Mark Keane was playing over in Australia. Was playing a variation, obviously, of football over in Australia. And, you would have said would have been a huge addition to Cork coming back this year, but has gone with the hurling and, hasn't seen a lot of hurling, or hasn't seen a lot of game time for the hurlers. So, you're always going to be picking from a more diluted pool of players that way when you're fighting two codes.
It almost feels, Brid, like some of the stuff you're talking about there, the S&C side, and then the likes of that piece, obviously, about Mark Keane, that a lot of it is not actually deep-rooted, fundamental stuff And I know that obviously getting your S&C right probably should be part of something like an S&C, a 5-year plan. But like a lot of it seems like fairly easy wins.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of like
if they could get it right, like it's not like they don't need to do an awful lot of navel gazing here. It's like a couple of things to be done, and suddenly things could start to turn for them.
Yeah, 100%. And like as I said, there has been definitely positives of this 5-year plan. It was brilliant. It was put in place, and it was put in place by the right people. And just to follow it through, just in the coming years, is absolutely vital. There was this, I suppose, vision for what Cork football could be. And, have we seen that at the moment? Probably not, but it's definitely taking stepstones towards it. It's not all doom and gloom, 100%, but like Ronan said, maybe there needs to be very, very hard calls made. But for me, I suppose, we're not utilising the younger players enough. Is that because they're just being absolutely launched into it without massive experienced role models in the senior football camp at the moment? Like when you look back to, I suppose, the year that Cork did win 2010, like you have massive leaders all over that camp. So for me, sometimes there's a lot of chopping and changing with panels in the last couple of years. There's a lot of player turnover, like I said, and that's not just down to the, opting for the hurling code. There's a lot of players opting out. There's obviously been some extensive injuries, and there's players being dropped. So there just seems to be a lot of player turnover in the last couple of years. And until you kind of nail down, a consistent team, you're going to be under the pump. Like you just look at Kerry, like their team has been relatively consistent now since they were the new guns on the block in 2019, when majority of their team changed, and they have been building consistency. And like even the physical specimens that they have become in that short space of time, it's a great platform for what can actually be done if there's consistency there, and there's, I suppose not that much player turnover. But like even looking back to 2019, 2020, you mentioned there, I suppose the shock win, the Marqueen punch goal and everything like that. Like you're looking at Paul Kerrigan, like I made a list there actually, it was like, I suppose you had Powter first of all in flying form, you had Shanley, you had Rory Dean, Mark Collins, Marqueen, Luke Connolly, Paul Kerrigan. That's only 2 years ago, and like that's a massive turnover of players again already. So like I just think Cork seem to be a team that are constantly in this massive turnover, and until I suppose you can try to nail down your good cohort and try to bring them forward and develop them as leaders and develop them physically, and hopefully that's what Keith Ricken is going to do this year with this new cohort, going forward. So I suppose we just have to be positive and look forward to Saturday with a little bit of hope.
Does Darragh O'Shea calling the Cork footballers a disgrace make you more or less looking forward to this game tomorrow?
Like, I don't think it's going to be the absolute whitewash that people are putting forward. I do think it's going to be a lot more competitive than the people think. Like that league team that was out there was very, very experienced, or very inexperienced, sorry, I mean to say, was probably, like as I said, there was like 15 debutants or something throughout the league. Like you are getting back a lot of, I suppose, more experienced players. Granted, look, they're not going to have the massive experience that some of the Kerry boys have in terms of like high championship powered games, but you're getting back Powter, as we said, Ty Carbery, Brian Hayes, Brian Hartnett, back in training now. You've Killian Hanlon, Liam O'Donovan, Conor Corbett, David Buckley. So like even the standard of training in the last couple of weeks would 100% have improved by just even having these lads back in the mix. So like I don't think it's going to be the whitewash that people are forecasting. I definitely think it's going to be a lot more competitive, but obviously Cork is still going in as underdogs, and they have to play as such. Every single person on that team and every single panel member that potentially has potential to come on has to know their role and has to play that role to massive effect. And I suppose, look, you can only look to Derry at the weekend versus Tyrone. Like you could see that they were planning for that Tyrone game with a long time, and every single player on that Derry team knew their role and played to their strengths, and that's what Cork have to do at the weekend. They just have to go in with an absolute, I suppose a definitely hardened mindset, and like they cannot be lacking any motivation, especially after a 22-point loss last year. There should be no Cork player on that field that isn't, making sure that they're first to every ball, because, the desire has to be there and we have to see it from the players.
What is the game plan you'd like to see then? Is it a backs to the wall sort of job park the bus? Is it a little bit more ambitious than that, or like I guess you Parky Rin is a bit of an asset on that front if that's how you set up. But how would you send them out if you were managing them tomorrow?
Yeah, well, no, like I suppose, I was listening to Ron McCarthy actually on that podcast, and like, you know, he made a very particular point about the Cork or the kickouts. You know, like Cork lost 75% of the kickouts last year in that Munster clash. So their own, like, Kerry absolutely dominated their own kickouts and obviously dominated Cork's kickouts. So, you know, to only have that much possession to be trying to work off, that is obviously a massive area that Cork need to see improvement on. You would hope that Cork have done massive work in that area. Now, Ian Maguire obviously is your mainstay midfielder. Like, he has loads of wonderful attributes. He's obviously, you know, a serious workhorse, and you know, he'll give his all for you. But is he the most dominant aerial midfielder in the game? Probably not. And you know, he's had probably counterparts in and out throughout the league. So there hasn't been a dominant midfield nailed down. But you don't have the luxury of going short, I suppose, on kickouts either. Like with this Cork team, you have a generally inexperienced backline against, I suppose, a physically stronger, physically experienced Kerry side. So what do you do? Like, I would say you would have to go along, and that there has to be this understanding by every single person in the middle third that, you know, what we're going to try to do as a Cork midfield is we are going to try to bring this ball to ground, get the ball to the deck, and make sure that there is massive fight around that middle third. And then try to use that obviously as your launch pad. Like Colm has been, you know, has probably energised this Cork forward line, you know, during the league. And, you know, you still have obviously Hurley and John O'Rourke doing the inexperience or the experience work. And then obviously Sherlock has proven that he's not just, you know, good from place ball. I think he scored something like 5 points from play against Offaly. So, you know, there is talent there, but it's a case of, I suppose, playing to our strengths as much as possible, not feeding into Kerry as much as we possibly can. Go along and make sure it gets to ground for maybe the first couple of kickouts. If the option for a very, very safe short kick out is on, you know, and just make sure that you're not, I suppose, very predictable for the Kerry team.
Kieran Whelan, just on that point, is sort of making you've sort of alluded to it a couple of times, Brid, like almost are we underestimating Cork here? He makes a point in the Irish Independent this morning about like you know, Kerry maybe aren't all that either just yet, that there's a bit of proving to be done there, particularly with some of the lesser experienced players. Like, if you put that into the mix with the whole stuff about the venue and how the players obviously dug their feet in over that, and how that can sort of galvanise it. Nothing better to galvanise a Cork team, Brid, than a bit of conflict like that. Are we underestimating this? Is there a possibility that we all look a bit like mugs on Sunday evening, that there's Cork could actually do something here, or is that, do you feel overstating it?
Look, like, you know, Kerry are justifiably going in as hot tipped favourites for this game, and you couldn't look past them. Like, you know, it would be idiotic, really, like looking back on, I suppose, their league performance and I suppose on Cork's league's performance, you know, having just kind of got the last 2 wins there versus down in Offaly. Kerry were emphatic during the league and were absolutely dominant against Mayo in the league final. And to take into the mix then, like, you still have the likes of Dave Moore and Paul Murphy, Stephen Acumbar and Sean O'Shea to come back into the mix. Like, so it's just like it's a fairly tough read, like, when you're looking at their team sheet. But look, Kerry are on a mission. That's very, very obvious. They obviously were very, very hurt by last year, and probably, you know, felt that they didn't do themselves justice. They have started with, you know, absolutely all guns blazing. Can I see David Clifford being held scoreless this year? Probably not. But, you know, you have to, I suppose, you just have to take it at I suppose, at its merit from a Cork point of view. The league, while it was absolutely probably, you know, didn't go the way that they had hoped, they were able to bleed a lot more players. They probably more so than Cork have ever bled, you know, down through the years. So, like, you are generating that little bit more grit at training. You are generating, I suppose, that little bit more bite coming into this game. As I said, training standards can only have had improved since getting all these lads back in the mix. And look, it's going to be a more experienced team going out. But I suppose for me, it's definitely Kerry by 5-6 points at the end,
The situation there when you talk about Kerry as being hurt by last year, like if you're clutching at straws for Kerry at the moment, you could definitely make that case about Kerry last year and the year before. It kind of feels like this conversation around Kerry, like you could copy and paste that argument to last year and the year before, where it's like they have the players, they clearly have the quality, but do they have the mentality? Yes, they were hurt after losing in a replay against Dublin in 2019, and then last year it was like, they were hurt after that shock defeat to Cork last year. Now this year they were hurt against Tyrone last year. So if you're looking for crumbs of comfort from a Cork perspective, like that mentality bit, that psychological bit, still does have to be answered by Kerry.
Yeah, it does. And I think Jack O'Connor is like obviously after giving them a renewed sense of focus as well. And, sometimes a change, especially if you're after holding on to a majority of the team, which they have. They've held on to absolutely everyone and brought on, a few more. I just think like he's obviously very, very experienced. He's Kerry through and through. And they're obviously fighting very hard for him. So for me, like they look, I suppose as they look like favourites for the All-Ireland at the moment. But yeah, time will tell. And I suppose, Saturday will be a big test of their ambition. Are they going to absolutely wipe the floor, or will I suppose Cork poke holes in Kerry? When they might not be at their top mindset, because they would obviously be favoured to come out of Munster, and they might feel that they have bigger fish to fry. But I suppose Saturday is a big test for them. For the Cork lads, probably more so than the Kerry lads, given what happened last year. You would just hope that the mindset is very, very good on the Cork side. I suppose it'll be interesting to see how Kerry are, how emphatic they are, or if Cork can put that pressure on.
And can I ask then, I suspect over the course of this next little while, people will be talking about Kerry in a sense of it's now or never, that this young team need to, they're less and less young as years go by, obviously, but that they have to win one now, otherwise it just becomes this massive psychological hurdle that they may be incapable of getting over. Is that a thing, Brid? Like if you go a couple of years without winning an All-Ireland, especially without winning your first All-Ireland, that it does become a bigger psychological block than it needs to be?
I suppose, my own experience of that would have been probably looking at the Dublin lady footballers, and, for years probably we would have, I suppose, just gotten over them. And, they were pushing to the pitch their collar the whole time. And I suppose, held in there. And they got their reward after, I think it was 3 or 4, All-Ireland finals versus us. So, I just think that this Kerry side, I know you're saying that they're shoving on a bit, but they're still massive youth there. They seem to just find these players the whole time. Like Tony Brosnan's come in, like I said, Stephen Cumbar, we're going to see hopefully what he can bring to the table as well. I just feel like that, this year is potentially Kerry's year. Because Dublin, we're seeing flashes of Dublin coming back to themselves. Are they going to be the absolute world beaters that they were a couple of years ago? That remains to be seen. Tyrone look a little bit on the fence, but then we thought they were on the fence last year when Kerry dismantled them down in Killarney, and look what happened then. So a shock loss to Derry could be their resurgence. And then Mayo, I suppose we always have a bit of a soft spot for Mayo. So I just think Kerry, I do think this is their year probably. And when you just look at the team sheet, you look at probably the new fresh manager after coming in, the emphatic way that they got through Division 1. It'll be interesting to see how the next couple of months go.
I was going to ask you if you, just before we let you away, you felt there was going to be an upset on the cards of Parnell Park as well. I'm actually not sure that what even represents an upset between Meath and Dublin this weekend, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I haven't actually seen too much of Meath, to be honest. But I suppose probably saw that Kildare definitely are going to be pushing hard, and it'll be interesting to see, I suppose, how Meath progress. But I suppose being over in Australia, I probably missed a couple more matches than I would have liked.
Yeah.
But
you're back. You're back a wet week, Brid. Is that's where you're at?
Back a wet week. Yeah, still waking up in the middle of the night, but you're up to grand out. It went grand, thankfully. It went a lot better than the last year anyway, so we can't have any complaints. So, glad to have it under my belt.
We'll get you back and have a longer chat about that again down the track. Thanks a million for jumping on.
Perfect. No matter. Thanks, lads.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot. Brid Stack there on the line. Just goes all things Cork Kerry. Robbie, good morning to you on YouTube. Waking up after a nightmare and realising that Rangers in the Europa League final, absolutely depressing. Another of the UK teams on flying it.
Yeah, fair play to them. A great moment for Her Majesty.
Anthony Ryan says he's from Cork. This is back to the conversation we were having at the top of the show about leaving games early. What do you... he says, I'm from Cork. First match I left early was the 2007 football final when we were hammered by Kerry.
That's fair enough.
You were nodding already there after 2007. There's like a little...
Yeah, in fairness, that's fair enough, I think.
Why is Cork, the third county by population, so poor at football, hurling and soccer? Asks Fergus Keogh. Good morning to you, Fergus.
Well, I think Johnny Ward is making a point that the whole point is that they play football, hurling and soccer, and that one is taking away from the other, and that they just play everything there, so they can't possibly compete in everything.
Yeah. Dave says, in reply to Fergus, because they're the Mayo of the south/southwest. Oof. I mean, he's saying that like it's an insult. You wouldn't want to be on here insulting Mayo, like it's not de rigueur.
No, it's not. It's not what we do on the show.
Not
Mayo FM.
Not what we're about. 8:20, Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. Loads still to come, by the way. We are going to be joined shortly by Aisling and Will. We're going to get stuck into the latest GAA Quick Picks ahead of a pretty interesting weekend as well. But next up, John Giles was on with Nathan last night talking about levels of concern for the future of Leeds on the basis of Jesse Marsch's comments that the 4-0 loss to Man City last weekend felt like a win.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
I knew it was going to be a tricky one, but I definitely didn't think there'd be no shots on target.
Keep up to date with the latest WSL action.
You have to win dirty sometimes, every single game, no matter who you are, no matter what firepower you have.
And the biggest interviews.
A difference in our style, but it wasn't a difference as to who we are or what our identity as a team were.
Subscribe to the Koi Gig podcast stream on the OTB Sports app now.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
Paddy, I go, what? He goes, Paddy Andrews. I go, yeah. As he goes, this is James' house. He's upstairs. Will I get him?
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are bringing the show on the road. The first stop for Ireland's biggest and best GAA pod will be the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd, as Paddy, James, Tommy and special guests dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football, as well as getting stuck into the runners and riders for Championship 2022. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees and are on sale now. See otbsports.com/events for more.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Watching that performance from Leeds at the weekend, are you concerned about what the next month might bring?
Yeah, I'm very worried about them, Nathan. I think the results around them have gone very, very bad for them. And as you say, they've got two hard matches, really on paper anyway, coming up. But what got me a little bit concerned was the attitude and the words from Jesse Marsch after the game, Nathan. He actually said it wasn't a 4-0 match. This was a loss, but in many ways, I feel like it's a win. You know, this isn't me talking. He's saying to the supporters, the fans. I'm calling it as I see it. But you know, they got a hiding. I mean, they were beaten 4-0, and you know he's on about the first goal shouldn't have been a free kick, but they didn't have to score from the City didn't have to score from the first free kick, or the second was a corner kick that they lost. But I can't understand how he can say it didn't feel like a loss. It felt more like a win. I mean, you're beaten 4-0, and you're coming into big matches now. So I don't get that. You know, I mean, if you think that felt like a win, well, what does it take to feel like a loss? It's just unrealistic. I don't know what he's talking about when he does that. So, like, this was a big defeat for them. I mean, Manchester City gave them a hiding on the day, and I just hope it improves because, as you pointed out there, there's 2 big matches coming up, and I hope they can do their stuff to keep out of relegation. But I'd be more worried about his remarks from that match going into the next 4 matches, Nathan.
Some of these critics, these pundits, I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
8:25, GAA Quick Picks. Good morning to you, wherever it is you are at this morning. You are watching OTB AM, and we're with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. And myself and Eoin are now joined by Will and Aisling. Morning, folks.
Morning, lads.
Top of the morning.
How we doing? All good?
All good now, yeah, not too bad.
I'm told we're going to get our leaderboard in action for next week, so it'll be a great surprise to everybody to see how this is all trending.
How bad would it?
Well, to be fair, Rooney obviously has decided to take some annual leave at a very bad time for him because his stock has never been higher. He should be on here this morning gloating the hell out of it after Derry last weekend.
Yeah, big time. I'm annoyed at myself for not saying that. For so long I had said that Derry are going to show up this year. Like last year, they only lost by a point to Donegal. It was knockout championship, so I was really excited to see them this year. So I'm so annoyed at myself that I didn't back them.
There's nothing we love more than a bit of revisionism here, Aisling. Welcome on in. Wise after the fact, you've come home.
Yeah.
And Westmeath, of course, we all went the right direction. Let's linger on that for half a second.
How did you leave early because they were out of sight?
No, I couldn't. I brought the 2 kids down. It was actually a brilliant experience. Cusack Park needs a bit of work. I'm going to say that to put it mildly, but brilliant experience. I'm just part of me that's a bit gutted that the semi-finals are in Croke Park because I really enjoyed getting out and about. Class experience. Kids out on the pitch at half time.
Yeah.
Brilliant. 5-year-old turns around to me and go, myself and his sister, can we go on the pitch? Like out milling around, loving it, pretend football.
Yeah. Were they kicking points?
Quintessential GAA experience. It's such a quintessential GAA experience. There was no lights in the jacks that looked like they were built in 1950 and hadn't been touched since in any regard.
That's what you want, though. That's authenticity right there.
Yeah, no, I'd be all for it.
The new plans for Cusack are actually quite nice.
Yeah.
When they eventually get completed, they've been fundraising for about 18 months, 2 years now. COVID kind of came at a wrong time when they were in the middle of fundraisers for it, but when it's completed, it will actually be really nice. I do like the kind of old school charm of it, though. No matter where you sit in the stand in Cusack, it feels like you're right in on top of the pitch.
And on top of each other, Will.
Well, there is that
we
too.
We partied like it was 1999 sort of way.
Yeah, unless you get some of the nice posh plastic seats right in the middle of the stand, you are going to be right beside the person. But hey, if you're dedicated, you're going at 6 o'clock on a Saturday night in the rain to go and watch Westmeath and Longford, and they delivered. I think at this stage, Westmeath, if they don't beat Kildare, and they'll obviously be underdogs going into that, felt it coming out of that game last week. Westmeath, they've got a very good chance of winning the Tailteann Cup.
And were the parents that had let their kids go onto the pitch at Westmeath Longford last week, were they aware that they were in the company of great coaching genius from Kilmacud who'd been bussed down from Dublin and was willing to give coaching sessions if required and paid enough?
Cork Kerry is our first stop that we're going to get to. I think is the only way to reply to that on. And it is Kerry across the board. No great surprise. I don't think, Aisling, there's a Derry-style prediction to be made here.
No, I don't think so. I'm really excited to see Kerry in this championship. I think in the league they showed signs of real improvement from last year. Like I think one of the biggest things was their defensive system that they needed work on, and in the league they really showed that's an area that they've been working on. I think the influence of Paddy Talley in there, the intensity that he's brought, and it's sort of what you'd see in Ulster teams. So you can see that influence coming through. So I'm excited to see what they do. I think Cork, look at the minute, they look a bit disjointed. They just about stayed up in Division 2. A lot of talk about where the game was going to be played, and we obviously know it's perfectly written. So hopefully they can use that to their advantage and put in a performance against Kerry. But I think if Kerry want to make a statement this year that they're going to go the whole way, they'd want to put up a big score against Cork.
Yeah, it's just about getting a benchmark, Will, of where this Kerry team are at.
Yeah, that's as dismissive of Cork as we can be. Look, maybe the fact that this game is in Páirc Uí Rinn, assistant to Brid in the last few minutes, might actually help them in that it kind of focused their build-up going into this game, that they were making 100% sure that they weren't going to have to travel west to play this game, that it was going to be played on Cork soil. But the truth of it is that, Kerry so far this year have shown that they are the best group of players that are in the country. The problem that you have with Kerry is that they've let themselves down with a couple of performances over the last few years. Like, I think they were below par against Tyrone in that semi-final last season. And if anything happens that David Clifford is either marked well, goes out of the game, or gets injured, you wonder about whether Kerry can then share around the load enough in a tight game. Because, we remember, Colm brought it up earlier on, the late goal that was scored at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Personally, I thought when it came to Cork, I would have probably travelled to Killarney and taken 2 games at Páirc Uí Chaoimh over the next years. This game you're in, but the proof will be in the pudding when the game gets underway on Saturday evening. It is unfortunate, though, this game pretty much clashes with everything else, that the Munster fans are probably still going to watch Leinster against Leicester, you would imagine, as opposed to casually watching the game at Páirc Uí Rinn afterwards too. But it should really be a very comfortable win for Kerry. You would think. I know Eoin was saying, 6 to 8 points? I think minimum 8 points Kerry should be targeting.
12 is the spread.
Right. The last thing you want to be doing is throwing in another scheduling issue into the mix for this fixture, given everything that's gone on. But it is fairly bizarre conflict that it seems a bit needless.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I know, Will, you've got thoughts on this, but like, for me, it's not like the scheduling is a separate thing, but like for me, it just feels, and I know Cork Kerry is its own separate entity of, a lack of expectation at the moment, and it's kind of like a dour enough weekend of fixtures, especially just with like a lack of good hurling fixtures this weekend. But it just kind of feels in general that this has been a bit of a damp squib so far, the entire hurling championship. Like, there have been like genuinely great moments so far. Like, I mean, like Derry Tyrone last week, Waterford Limerick the previous week was really exciting. Like, I mean, the Clare hurler so far have been a bit of a spark. But say, for example, this week, if it wasn't for the Brian Cody handshake, kind of feels like a lot of last weekend's GAA storylines would have kind of fell into the distance a little bit. Like, we've spoken a lot about how losing the September window is like bad for the GAA. I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that, but I think also there's a case to be made that at the start of the championship now, you are competing with the other sports more, and you're competing with football in its business end more. And I mean, Champions League weeks, it's very, very hard to move that off the back pages. Champions Cup obviously clashing with it at the moment, so this is the first time ever really that the championship and like big championship games, Kerry Cork in a traditional sense is going up against Heineken Cup, and it's going up against Champions League, and it's losing. The GAA is losing in that battle against those two sports at the moment. Of course, it'll spark into life in a month, but basically, from what I can see, April and half of May is going to be not lost, but a little bit underwhelming in a coverage sense.
Well,
the GAA competing against his own product didn't help last week either, where the two really interesting hurling games of the weekend, where you had Galway against Kilkenny, which was understandably going to be the TV pick given the fact that it was Shefflin versus Cody, and I'm sure the TV companies didn't expect they were going to get quite as much drama after the 70th minute in that game as they did, between the late free being given, Galway getting a last gasp winner, and then the bizarre handshake between Cody and Shefflin. But it meant that Cork and Clare wasn't on TV, it was on GAA Go, which, when you show kind of a crapshoot football game at 6 o'clock the night before, where Dublin eased to victory against Wexford, it seemed an awful shame the way it was set up. And I was looking forward to ahead to the TV schedule for next week. And again, these were picked well in advance, and you'd have to understand that TV schedulers will have to pick months out. But you could potentially have a fairly dead rubber game between Tipperary and Cork next week, which is going to be on TV. And then you've got two provincial semi-finals in Leinster, which aren't going to be on TV at all. And I don't know, maybe some flexibility is required when it comes to something like a round robin, where one or two results can massively change the outlook before the next set of games takes place. It's unfortunate this week is the Leinster break week in the hurling, and there's only one game on in Munster. Surely it would have been better off to have, say, the Clare and Cork game on this weekend, along with Limerick against Tipperary, and spread them across 2 days. And that way you're not competing against each other.
In a weird way, I kind of feel on a football level, hurling is different in this regard, but on a football level, the National League almost has a better chance of just grabbing back pages on a on a Monday morning than some of the championship stuff does at this moment. And like obviously, like if we're complaining here, you got to ask yourself, what's the fix? Do you necessarily go back to the way it was? And I'm not sure that's the case either. I just feel that this might actually force the GAA into thinking that they need to have the best possible product front and centre all the time. This sort of sleepwalking into the football championship, which we've seen over the last couple of years, you can get away with it when there's nothing else on. And I guess the hurling could take away from it. But what's actually happening now is that actually people are like, there's enough other sports on. I watch Leinster against Leicester.
I do think,
Kerry
look, the clashes thing notwithstanding, because that's just such a blatant thing that you should try and schedule away from that sort of stuff, regardless of the belligerent nature of. There are sports and we'll put them on. Just like there has been some flexibility shown before, particularly around some of the football stuff. I remember the soccer stuff last year. But I do think that if you're from Leitrim, like you're in the height or somewhere now heading into this weekend, like obviously we discussed Cork or whatever, but like Cavan, you're the same way. Like there is an elitism about some of the points that you're making that obviously relate to, that will come into your breadbasket soon on if you're patient in terms of Kerry, right? Like, because I think if you're from those counties that I've just mentioned, or you're from like obviously my own county that I was at last weekend, or Kildare, the excitement is bubbling up, the excitement in Meath is bubbling up. I think a lot of it relates to where your county is at any given point. There's nothing that's going to excite you too much at this point of the year anyway, given the nature of...
How can I get excited about Westmeath Longford when I can't watch the match?
Well, look, that's absolutely true, and it struck me as Will was talking there, if we could just show more games.
I don't think it's an elite mindset at all. I'm not looking down on these. But
what I'm saying to you is, like, there'll be people from Leitrim listening to what you're saying this morning going that they couldn't be... They're getting the dinner out of the way today so they can head into the weekend with a full, clear schedule.
I'm unbelievably excited. Like, I'll be at Parky Rin tomorrow. I'm very, very excited about this. Like, I'm talking about it in a general sense about with the spotlight on the sport at the moment. Like, I'm not looking down on Leitrim people.
I never said you were.
I'm just saying that... trying to, like, invent something here.
I never said you were. I'm just saying that there is... If you're saying that... There was the scheduling point that you made, right? Or that Will was making. And then your point was making that it feels as if everything hasn't really fully kicked into life just yet.
Yeah, it feels like the GAA second fiddle.
So no, look, that's fair enough. I'm just saying that there will be loads of counties around the country who are buzzing for this weekend and for the weekends to come, and obviously all the Tailteann Cup teams who are going to obviously go through the rigours of that in the weeks ahead. I'm just saying that it depends on where you're from, really, in terms of your excitement of where the championship is at any given moment.
Well, the counterpoint to this, before Eoin ends up being shot at some point and Leitrim becomes the new Unix and Mayo at some point, is that last week we had the All-Ireland champions get hammered by a Division 2 team. So we have had a few kind of exciting twists and turns so far. But
I think on that point, I think that like if Tyrone, I think if you wait 5 days, plus if Tyrone had beaten Derry last weekend, which, you know, by form they should have done, but so if that had happened, right, you've still got you've got the All-Ireland champions still really in the mix, still going for it in a way that I don't feel they are right now, and then you add in 5 days time ahead where Kerry have laid down a marker, Galway have probably laid down a marker, like maybe Donegal have laid down a marker, and suddenly it's focused the mind a little bit. It's probably just at this exact moment in time where we're still waiting for some of those teams to really hit their straps.
But that's not my point at all. My point is, like, you're absolutely right. Tyrone Derry was a big story this week. It was a great game, a brilliant moment. It just feels, what's the story of the week? The story of the week is Manchester City's collapse. It's Katie Taylor at the Garden.
Shefflin and Cody.
Shefflin Cody, because it seemed like pretty extraordinary. That elevates it to a level above. I just feel that in previous years, Tyrone versus Derry would have been just a much bigger talking point in the middle of the summer. Again, I'm not saying it's the right thing to go back there. I'm just commenting. It's just an observation that it's just not as there's not as much of a buzz around the championship, even allowing for the frailties in the provincial championship at this point of the championship than compared to the previous years. And I don't know if it's something that needs to be fixed or not. It's just something that I'm remarking upon.
No, I understand what I would say. It's not really in the spotlight. I don't feel the buzz as much as I would have felt other years. And I think as well, a sense of people just catching on. There's some people that you meet and they're like, oh geez, the championship is on at the minute, you know?
Yeah.
They're only getting used to this. I was talking to friends the other day and we were talking about plans and I was like, oh no, July is going to be the All-Ireland and the end of July. And they're like, what? I was like, and they're big GAA people. I was like, yeah, like I think there's a sense of people not really fully knowing what's going on at the minute. And look, we've had the problems with the provincial of not really being that exciting. So maybe people are just not fully tuned into it just yet. But I do get what Eoin's saying, that the spotlight isn't fully on it like other years because other sports are going on at the minute. So yeah, it doesn't have that full buzz that we're used to having, I think.
Just on that point, because look, I know generally player interviews can be reasonably monotonous and we'll take each game as it comes and whatever else. But I'm wondering how much of an impact there has been by the GPA opting to not have their players speak after games and to pull out of pre-championship media events and so on as well. Like, a lot of the space that would have probably been taken up in the newspapers middle of the week, and definitely space that would have been on radio stations and TV over the last while, would have been player interviews on the week of games. With that removed, how much hype is that actually taken away?
I'm going to leave a couple of the last words here to our YouTube commenters. Kevin Keogh, who says that Eoin has a huge problem with England and Leitrim. I've been banging on about it for months now.
I hate them both so much.
Equally.
The UK, though, you would never say England.
Nothing grinds my gears more than Leitrim.
Damien says, I'm English.
Weekend and Carrigan Shannon kills him.
I'm English and I've got a problem with England. Paul Quirk has a good idea. Friday night games will be a great option for the GAA to explore for the championship. It works great for the club, really sets the tone for the weekend, and like, it is definitely something that would be appealing. The amateur nature of the thing obviously suddenly comes into that, where you're obviously asking vast swathes of people who have other stuff to be doing with their time to earn a living to take even more time off, and I guess that is maybe where part of that complication comes into it. Right, on to our second quick pick. And I have a feeling that we're all going the same direction in almost all of these games. Donegal, Cavan, and we're Donegal across the board. The only slight caveat might be that, a bit like Carlo Ancelotti, when he gets to Paris next week, he might be having flashbacks of what's happened in yesteryear. And Donegal, Ashley, might be having flashbacks of their own to the athletic grounds in 2020.
Yeah, I was there. It was a massive game, unbelievable, and it was one of those games that you never expected Cavan to come out on top, and they did. And the scenes after it was just amazing to see. So you could never write Cavan off. We didn't think they were going to do that performance that year. You never know what they're going to do this year. But I think for Donegal, when we spoke about them against Armagh in their first game, you know, I pondered so much over my prediction and I was going back and forth, and I finally went with Donegal, thankfully. But now I just hope that we can see this continue. Like, consistency has been a massive problem for Donegal. Once they get this big win, can they push on? And they always just fall short. And you just wonder what goes on, because they've such a good team in paper. But we really see it against Armagh. They put up a big score, really good performance. So I hope they can kick on now. But I'd never write Cavan off, because you just don't know what you're going to get with Cavan. They had a good win as well against Antrim, and they kicked 120, which is no mean feat. So that was good for them. And kicking 20 points, you know, is always a massive positive. So I do think it's going to be a tougher task than people imagine, but I do expect Donegal to come out on top.
Ulster is such a weird province at the best of times to get a fix on who at any one point is the leading candidate to challenge for the All-Ireland, and it's generally not until the Ulster final is played, and at that point everybody's hindsight kings and they're all like, well, it was so obvious all the time. But Will, the Derry win last weekend, how much has that changed the outlook in Ulster? And I suppose they'll play Monaghan next weekend. Who do you see coming out of that for?
Yeah, I kind of have a slight fancy for, and this is getting ahead of next week, so if I change my mind, someone will just scrub back to this week. I kind of still have a slight fancy for Monaghan to beat Derry in the other semi-final, and obviously we've gone for Donegal across the board to win this one. So Monaghan against Donegal final. I actually kind of fancy Monaghan to win Ulster this year. They were probably unlucky not to win it last year. They gave Tyrone a decent enough rattle at Croke Park, but just didn't quite have enough to get over the line in that one. So yeah, Monaghan for Ulster for me at the moment.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know, I'd be picking Donegal for Ulster just, I think, if that's the final. And it's a big if, I think, on both cases of these semi-finals. I think it'll be a great clash. Like, I do think we do, like, remember 2020 very vividly because of that whole day. Obviously, Tip winning Munster on the very same day. The manner of the Cavan win, it was very, very dramatic. But, like, if we're talking about Kerry Cork earlier on, and like writing off that Kerry performance in 2020, like I think maybe Donegal deserve a little bit of leeway, not a whole pile, but a little bit of leeway for 2020. Cavan were amazing that year, and they were brilliant against Antrim a few weeks ago. But Donegal have been consistent in Ulster. It's been outside of Ulster where they've been inconsistent. I think it'll be 10 out of 12 Ulster finals they'll have reached if they win this weekend, which is just a brilliant record and such a minefield of a province. like I don't think nobody's calling this game as a blowout for Donegal anyway. I think if the spread is something like 6 points, I think it'll be smaller than that. I think there'll be a goal between the teams. I think it'll be Donegal by 3, but you're not overly confident predicting either of these semi-finals in the Ulster Championship. They should be both brilliant games.
Yeah, and like just with Donegal, Oisin Gallen coming back in the next few weeks, Murphy going along really well, McHugh playing well off him, like a lot of players hitting their straps and a lot of pieces, I suppose, falling into place nicely at the right time almost for Donegal. Are they, how far back from Kerry are they? I suppose, isn't that the benchmark really of where any team is at the minute?
I don't know, a bit you'd have to say. You like it. What's their ceiling is the question when you're analysing that. And I don't think their ceiling is at Dublin or Kerry's level. I think that they're the teams, like obviously Tyrone's ceiling last year, I don't think that exists this year if we're going to read a lot into last year. And then I think you'd have to have Mayo as a team that can get to a higher level than Donegal as well. But maybe they prove something new. Like, I mean, they do have a good management team in there, but they're probably under a slight bit of pressure as well to prove that they can get the most out of this team and maybe eke a little bit more out of them, just like the Tyrone management team did with their players last year. So to answer your question, I think there's a little bit of a gap. But I mean, if they manage to kick lumps out of Cavan this weekend and ratchet up a big score and there's a bit of a gulf between the teams, I think the conversation changes around Donegal a bit.
Let's touch on Leitrim Galway. We won't linger on it, but let's touch on it here, and it won't be any great surprise that it's Galway across the board. And just looking at the odds, Will, for this one, overall, no more than the conversation we've just been having about how far away from Kerry, or as Owen would say, Kerry and Dublin, Galway are third favourites alongside Mayo and Donegal to win the All-Ireland.
Right.
On the basis of, obviously, the previous round. What, is that justified, Will, for you?
Yeah, it's a big call to make this early in the year. I mean, obviously, Galway had a very impressive league campaign and are now one step away from going up against their neighbours Roscommon in the Connacht final, and obviously that leads directly into the back end of the knockout stages. So you're probably seeing the market reflected a little bit around that as well, because there's some very difficult games for teams in Ulster left, and obviously Kerry are favourites based on what they've done so far this year, and they're expected to beat Cork. But look, I was obviously very impressed by Galway last time out. I mean, we kind of had our slight reservations after what happened in the league final, and then they came out absolutely flying. So I don't know, look, obviously they've got a more direct route potentially to the All-Ireland series, but that's a very difficult Connacht final ahead for them against Roscommon. That'd be my concern if I was a Galway fan, but obviously they have to get over Leitrim first. I mean, I don't think any of us genuinely think that Leitrim are going to be that close to Galway this weekend, do we?
No, I don't suspect so. I think there'll be a bit of a margin there. I don't think it would be a surprise, says this YouTube commenter, if Cavan won on Sunday. Cavan for the win, says Cavan lad. Let's move on to the hurling, I think, next. Limerick against Tip, and it's Limerick across the board. Tipperary 0 from 2, injuries galore, low ebb. Anybody feeling in 30 seconds it's going to be tight here, or what are we thinking?
Nope.
No, I think it's too much of a task for Tip here, just with their injuries as well. Jason Ford, James Quigley, James McGrath, to be going in against Limerick with not a full strength squad and not playing your best hurling. I can't see it. And at the moment, we're just seeing Limerick really get into their stride.
What do they need? Well, how much of a lead do they need at half-time to win this game? 16, 17 points? So if they're not up by that much at half-time, you can write it off.
After last year, you need more than that. It's an awful pity that this game is likely to be a blowout for Limerick, even without Kyle Hayes and without Cian Lynch, because the Munster final was so good and so absorbing last year, and Limerick's comeback was just remarkable. But Tip are down probably 5 of the 6 starting forwards if you're picking a team on paper earlier this year, and then you add the 2 Mars into it as well. I don't know. I mean, for Tipperary, it's about not finishing bottom of Munster now.
And then Dublin Meath in the Leinster final at Parnell Park. It is 3 Meaths and a Dublin. Finally, we have a point of difference here, and look at it. It's the tightest game of the whole lot to call, isn't it? There was difficult one to get in, but look, it's my call there is on the basis of obviously there are so few teams even competing for this thing. Dublin have had a run out, albeit Will is talking about blowouts there against Westmeath last weekend, but they, I'm sure Meath have been tipping away with challenge matches, but it just doesn't replicate that intensity and preparation that you get for a championship game. Meath haven't had that. 2 points between them in the All-Ireland final last year. And also what's in my mind, to be honest, is Hannah Turrell was sat in your seat on there about 3 months ago, or a little bit more probably at this stage, in fact a lot more, about 6 months ago, and she was talking about the hurt from that game, and she wasn't making it up. It was very clear in her eyes that this was that hurt badly. And so I don't think there was much between them to begin with. Obviously Meath are currently holding on to some of their players who are about to take flight, and that would be definitely swing me in the Dublin direction. I don't think much, but for that reason, no, I'm going for Dublin.
Yeah, like I'm not sure. I didn't see the Dublin Meath game between them in the league, but like I think we sometimes forget that Meath won the league, but Dublin beat them in the league. Yes. It was Donegal who did Dublin in that one. But the thing is, Meath were just awesome in that league final at times. Donegal are an excellent team, and they're going to be a contender this year as well. And they managed to grind out that win. And obviously the collection of players that we became so familiar with on their path last year. I just think they're a brilliant team, and I think they're going to win at the weekend. But it's that sort of not an intangible around Dublin, but there's like a revenge mission for them this year in an overall sense that they'll have their eyes on the All Ireland for sure.
Aisling, wrap it up for us there by endorsing my pick.
No chance. No, I can't wait to see this. And as we're talking about the league, they did, Dublin did beat Meath, but it was only a point, and Meath left off their college players that day. So you didn't have a lot of their main starters on the team. And I think they nearly did that on purpose to not show their full hand this year, because they know that Dublin are absolutely gunning for them, and they're going to want to go the whole way. And not to go on about Meath, but we have seen them go from Division 3, Division 2 to Division 1 in the league, intermediate, senior championship winners. And the only thing that they do not have with this amazing team is a senior Leinster title. So I think they'll really have their eyes set on wanting to win this, and it'll be a massive game. It's in Parnell Park, there's a lot to it, but I do think that Meath have Kelsey Nesbitt back as well. She's been out for a while. She's been on the bench. She came back in at the league. You've seen the influence she made. So they've a lot added as well this year that should be a big positive for them. But you can never write the Dubs off. You see Carla Rowe is back in form as well. She kicked 2-5 last week, along with Hannah Tyrrell. She scored 2-9. So there's massive positives for both teams. But I just think Meath will just about edge it. I hope so anyway.
We shall see.
There's only one cautionary thing about this game, is that this is a round robin series that the teams are in. I would like to have seen the teams, which will probably be announced around noon, before picking this, because Dublin scoring 6-23 against Westmeath last week. Meath will be expected to beat Westmeath next week. So both teams are going to qualify for a final in a few weeks' time. So I'm wondering, will there be any element of shadow boxing just for this fixture as opposed to the Leinster final itself?
That's a fair point. I'm all in Dublin. Thanks, folks. Thanks a lot. That's the quick picks for this week. It is gone 10 to 9. Friday morning, you're watching OTB AM, and we've loads still to come. The papers now.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse. I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not having that. No.
Alright, it is 10 to 9. OTBSports.com for you this morning. Here's what's going on. I don't subscribe to it being the Holy Grail. John Giles endorsing the credentials of Pep Guardiola there. They were in tears. It was just their raw emotion. That's a really nice piece of video from OTB Productions that is in relation to the Ireland team who won the Grand Slam a few years ago. Fiona Hayes and Nora Stapleton and Alison Miller in conversation there up at Ashburn Rugby Club, and it's a lovely piece, and I recommend that you go and check it out, and other pieces besides OTBSports.com for you this morning. The Irish Independent, picture of Declan Rice there, incredulous Declan Rice after West Ham's exit from the Europa League last night. James Ryan to return for Leinster in European quarter-final clash. This is post the return to play protocols. He was left out of the South African tour, but looks as if he might be back in the mix for this weekend. And Bradley in talks over Rovers' future ahead of Harps clash. They play Finn Harps in the League of Ireland tonight, but it does look as if he's Lincoln City bound, if all reports are to be believed. That is the Irish Independent for you. The Irish Star has a very similar theme here. I think they think it's all Rover, it imp now. The words of the Daily Star this morning, and Paul Lennon writing, Stephen Bradley is to become the new manager at Lincoln City, barring a dramatic U-turn by Stephen Bradley. So that looks as if it will happen. Pep will sign on, so I guess that's a boost. It is a boost, of course, for Manchester City. Won't bring the Champions League back for them, but it'll give them a bit of a fill-up if he does sign up on the dotted line as is expected. Sort this out. The Minister calls on boxing to stop the infighting. This is Mark Gallagher writing here. The government have hit out at the internal squabbling ongoing within Irish boxing. as it says here, is preventing Ireland's most successful Olympic sport from reaching its potential. It's the further fallout from the official resignation from his position at the high performance unit of Bernard Dunn during the week, and more reaction to the Europa League as well last night. Inside that is the star for you this morning, the Fall English. It was Leicester and West Ham making their exit last night. Chambers concerned about the boxing stuff there, and Mo Salah last night being crowned the Football Writers Player of the Year at the award ceremony. So that's the papers. We'll come back to those in just a little bit, but it's 5 to 9, and good morning to you wherever it is you're at. Delighted to have you with us. Keep your comments coming in. Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Adrian, how are you?
Good, thanks. You're looking very relaxed there for a man who's just over 24 hours out from the biggest game of the season.
Yeah, I didn't think about it like that, but it's another week. It's an important week, big game for the club, big game for us, home quarter-finals. So it's exciting. This is why we get involved in the game. So it's good to be relaxed, I think, but we know that there's serious business to be done as well.
Is all the planning from your point of view done now, or is there still, do you use that last 24 hours to lock more stuff off, or is it all done and dusted?
Yeah, you do, kind of Thursdays are big training, so we had average training yesterday, so you have to kind of, I suppose, pick the key points out of that, present it to your players, and then we kind of do what's the captain's run, which means that the captain obviously and the leaders in the group take that session, and I suppose a time for, I suppose, the replacements or finishers, whatever way you want to call them, they get more time, I suppose, in the position that they could be featuring in tomorrow. So kind of not much intensity, but you need to be mentally alert, obviously.
Montpellier, you probably couldn't have handpicked better their opposition obviously last weekend in the sense of Bordeaux, and whatever about the outcome, and Bordeaux won that match, but how much of a help was that, given how well you've got to know Bordeaux over the last few weeks?
Very little, really. I think
Right.
it's very little transfer, obviously, with the history of the French home and away record and how difficult it is, but then also you're looking at a different competition, different referee, and it's crazy how quickly, I suppose, teams lose and get form in France. So, I mean, the reaction, I suppose, of a lot of our French players would have been they would have preferred an Irish or an English team in a quarter-final. Going against their own makes it, I think, a little bit more difficult for them mentally. But I suppose the most important thing is that we're playing at home. It would be far more difficult to go into Montpellier, but they've already come here and won in the top 14, so they were in better form, and that did happen. I think we've got better as the season has gone on, so tomorrow is a good opportunity for us.
I remember chatting to you 12 months ago about that, almost this exact point of the season, where it's that week-on-week nature of every game almost being a season-defining game, and sort of post last weekend for yourselves, I guess it's in that mould now from week to week, both in terms of Europe and domestically as well. What or how much did you learn from last week or last year that you're now been able to apply to this type of a run-in?
Yeah, it's actually got. I think it's been. Is it 3 times in the history of the top 14 over 100 years? I think with 2 weekends to go that we don't know anyone for the top 6. So it's crazy how.
Incredible.
Yes. So, I think, as you say, learning from last year, we were always, kind of in the top 2 in the league last year. And we put a big emphasis on that, but I probably think with a little bit of hindsight, there's different ways of probably trying to achieve what you do want to achieve. So the focus this year is to being in the 6, but as we now know, getting into the 6 is going to be very difficult, like it is for every other team. We're not in a better or worse position than anyone else, but as you say, what becomes interesting from this week on is that hopefully you play a quarter-final. If you proceed, you play a semi-final, then the following week it's essentially a 1/8 of a final against Stade Francais. It's your second last league game, which Eoin, I don't think there'll be a season like this for 4 French teams anyway, that they're competing in quarter-final stages of the Champions Cup, but also trying to keep their domestic hopes alive. So it makes it fascinating, and and put emphasis on your group as opposed to your team. And with that, that becomes very important. The fact that I suppose how you've managed all your players since last July, because some people are under upbeat, some people are over upbeat, and you're trying to just get, I suppose, the energy levels at that level where you have enough for 80 minutes, which is always a very, very delicate balancing act.
Can I ask just to loop back to something we were chatting about earlier in relation to how you're using the next 24 hours? How are you managing, like, are you using that time to have individual conversations with people, like either by way of arm around the shoulder stuff or a bit of prodding or poking or tactics, or how specifically will you use that 24 hours?
Well, we'll train at 2:00, and there might be one or two nuggets in the video of training yesterday for a few guys, but essentially, you just, I suppose, that's where trust comes into it. I think you gotta know your players and kind of, I suppose, if something jumps out at you, you'll be able to tweak it. But what you don't want to be doing either, like at this stage, when they get into the heat of battle, are they going to remember the conversation tomorrow as of today? I'm not too sure, Adrian. So I think you're trying to declutter them and make sure that they're kind of excited for what's ahead. And I think the interesting thing for me is that they kind of trust their instincts and get to that mental space of trusting their autopilot, and it becomes automatic for them, and they play with flow, and they play with, I suppose, freedom, and within a roughly defined framework, as opposed to I need you doing this here,
Yeah, you talk about the heat of battle there. There was another clip doing the rounds this week. I'm sure it wasn't lost on you. What happened between yourself and the Toulouse coach?
Just a difference of opinion, that happens. It was very, very controlled, it's kind of just a difference of opinion around the tackle, whether arms were used or not. I said from the video, you can see he clearly raps, and he just didn't agree. So that's okay, you kind of just make your point and move on.
He had a cheeky little wink to his coaching staff, I presume, which felt like, I'm a die-the-grave man to be winding him up.
Yeah, exactly. But sure, that's, this part of the cinema, as they say in France. That's I think a lot of coaches or a lot of people actually enjoy screen time. It's fascinating. I think the emphasis they put on the media over here, the fact is that maybe the more screen time you get, the more important you are. While I suppose in the business of high performance, it's what you do with your group and what medals you've won in your career, and that's the most important thing for me.
Of course, we wouldn't get carried away with any sideline antics in this country. I mean, it's not like there's been a handshake between two hurling greats that's been under the microscope here all week or anything.
Sorry, Eoin, I don't have I'm just looking at a dark black screen, so that's why I didn't say hello at the start. Excuse me. I
not at all.
He's always lurking here, Ronan. You just always bear that in mind. He's lurking somewhere.
A good Kerry man.
Did you see the Cody Shefflin handshake?
I did, yeah. I did. But I only saw the clip, and I think there's always, to comment accurately, you need context, and I hadn't seen anything throughout the game. I didn't see the body language of either of them through the game or at the end of the game, but obviously it was a cold handshake. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, saw somebody saying afterwards that it's well possible the two of them were laughing away about it afterwards, which I think we should all bear in mind. Like when you're talking about these things, we tend to get very po-faced about them, and the reality behind the scenes might be something entirely different, of course. Had you any calls from the Munster group this week, if I can be that specific about it? Anybody on to you saying, listen, we need a steer on this or that ahead of the game tomorrow?
No. It's I don't have any links really with the current group. I've friendly with a few players, but there's great value in the saying, when you're gone, you're gone. So.
What if the call was to come? What would you be saying?
Well, you can't be as inaccurate as we were. If you want to take down a championship team like Toulouse, you've got to be accurate. We turned over the ball 18 times when we had the ball within our control. So that's skills that is our skills let us down under pressure. Is that because we were playing in a fantastic soccer stadium where the crowd were pumping and got under our skin, or did we lose concentration and exit from the shows that have worked for us well all season? I think there's a combination of reasons for why we didn't get the job done last weekend, but I think they'll see enough from our scraps to give them a lot of confidence. And you also, I suppose, combine that with their performance in Thomond Park. I think it was in a COVID stadium where there weren't supporters, and Munster had them on the ropes, but they didn't have the knockout punch. They tore them apart at times, and I remember watching that game afterwards, just reviewing it for myself. They really stressed Toulouse. What Toulouse most definitely have an advantage is that they're mentally very, very strong. So, I mean, if they go behind, they still have that capacity to win the big games. And I think you saw again for people who watched it, the value of Dupont. It wasn't with the ball; it was just him chasing and harrying Brice Dulin to force a rush kick and charge down 7 points. That's immeasurable in close games. Munster, I think, will have seen enough about how they can go about dismantling Toulouse.
And like, had it not been an empty Thomond Park last year as well, when you talk about that belief to come from behind, like maybe that gives Munster that extra kick in that fixture. So like, I think that's an interesting element going into the Aviva Stadium this weekend, is that if that feels like a real Munster home game, and if the two sides haven't moved too far apart in the last couple of years, it could have a really significant impact on the outcome.
Yeah, it could. I think it's going to be tight. I think, obviously, it seems like there's a good spell of weather over Europe at the minute, so you're going to have a fast pitch. The Aviva is brilliant for playing, I suppose, high-tempo rugby, and also there's space because it's a proper rugby pitch for a really effective kicking game. You'll find at times that Ramos will be in the backfield on his own, so it'll be interesting, I suppose, tactically to see how Munster go about finding space against them, but there will be space. But you still got to remember that Toulouse have 10 of that 23 Grand Slam winning team on their books, so they have quality everywhere. But I just think the Colby factor, him taking him out of that, the X factor that Dupont and Colby had together, is something I feel that Toulouse are missing. Is it enough to stop them? I'm not sure.
A player in the backfield on his own is made for a Ronan O'Gara style ball on the string, kick to the corners.
Yeah, it most definitely is nowadays. Yeah, if you're 14 in the front line, especially with the 50-22. So attacking, kicking games, I think what separates the top teams. I think you look at England a few years ago were really, really excellent with probably 5 kickers in their back line. I think Saracens were doing it really well for a period of time as well. Finn Russell for Racing does it really well. Obviously Leinster attacking kick threats are very, very hard to defend. So it is an area I think that's underappreciated in the game for unlocking, I suppose, these kind of rush defences.
It doesn't all need to come from the boot of Joey Carbery, I guess. Is that the part of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. The way the game is going, if you have a 13 who's accurate with his foot, it makes such a difference, because especially kind of from your 22 to the halfway line, how defences, I suppose, measure up in terms of where their 11, 15 and 14 are. If they're deep, you're going to exit with your hands. But if they're not deep, it's better if you can kind of go 10 to 13, and 13 has a decision depending on what the defending winger is doing. If their winger and 15 push up, he can kick it in behind him. If not, he just plays a pass to his 15, and you see that with Ireland, with Hugo Keenan kicking in the wide channels, and Simon Zebo from Munster with his left foot especially. It becomes a very, very hard option to defend.
I noticed in your Irish Examiner column this morning you were talking about how well got Joey Carbery is in France. So I don't know. I part of me was a bit surprised by it almost, because there's a little narrative that is taken on here now that like maybe Joey Carbery would be better served at 15 full time, and you're bringing in one of the other young bucks at 10. But that's not your reading of it, or is it?
No, because it was more the French staff. I think when I'd say this comes from the Ireland-France game, and on reflection, I'd say these people have poured over the video 10 times. And I think, I mean, he's going into that game with so little Test rugby, if not Champions Cup rugby under his belt, and to put in a performance like that, I think they fear his running threat, his capacity to play in behind the pods of forwards and go through the hole. He has a blistering pace, but I think we haven't seen that frequently enough, probably in the last 6 months. But you remember the early stages of his career, he was doing it every second game. I think his big point of difference is his running threat.
Yeah. So is that a confidence thing that just ratchets up over the next little while? Confidence in his own body, even?
It's very interesting, because I think when you're an own half, probably the areas he was probably told to work on is putting more structure in his game and bringing out the best in players around. And sometimes you forget what got you to this point. And I think when you look at Joey Carbery, all his rugby career, he was a brilliant runner, epitomised, I suppose. We remember that break against in Murrayfield when he had the power to break through the two Scottish forwards and throw out a delicious pass left to right to Keith Earls for Early to score. But he was doing that in a blue jersey as well, very, very well. But I think for Munster, the fact is that hopefully now this is his patch to drive on, to kick on, because for the last 24 months he's been really, really, I suppose, challenged by differing lower limb injuries.
Is it a case where he's essentially just stripped it back to the basics then, on top of the injuries, to try and, I guess, get the bread and butter part of the out half role down, and it's about refinding that spark, having, really sharp, like his place kicking has always been excellent, but it's noticeably excellent at the moment, and then also the kind of structured playmaking element of his game as a number 10. Is it just about nailing those down and then adding the spark back to his game now over the next little while?
I would even strip it back even further. I would just be looking for him to present himself fit every Monday for 20 weeks. You know what I mean? If he can put 10 games in a row together, which he probably hasn't, I would say his performance graph is so stop-start that it just makes, I suppose, any capacity to have momentum extremely difficult. And if you look at it, I suppose, with a little bit of detail, we can see over the last 24 months, it's been 2 stop-start. But now, hopefully, the injuries are behind him, and all he needs to do he needs to do is understating it, is try and present fit, so he's on the pitch every week. And if you're getting minutes in that jersey, in that position, with the experience he now has, with confidence in the body, he's just going to get better and better.
We touched on you last week about Mike Prendergast, and obviously it was waiting to happen, and now it's since happened. I wondered afterwards if the appointment and the style that he's been used to coaching at Racing, particularly that sort of ambitious, expansive style, whatever you want to call it, is it just a case? So I suppose Munster fans are probably wondering, is he coming in now to do that with us, or is it a case that he's just a very good coach and he can come in and play whatever he has in front of him?
Yeah, he's both, I think. What is, I suppose, really important to stress to the listener is the fact that he has a very, very suitable personality for coaching, and the fact that he doesn't really get stressed. He does get frustrated, but he's really good at channeling that for himself, and then I suppose empowering his players to play exactly how he wants to play the game. He has certain ideas which he's very strong on, but I think he's also smart enough to understand the DNA of Munster and what make Munster players and supporters tick, and how you combine that together. And that's very important as well. But in terms of a style of playing, he would be all over, I suppose, all the nuances of attack play. But I think the key to Mike is that he wouldn't be just stuck in one model. You know, he's played a 1-3-3-1, he's played a 1-3-2-2, he's played a 2-4-2. So he has plenty of, I suppose, tools in his toolbox. It's just which one he feels best at bringing out. But I think it'll be more around the environment, but also among the strategy and people wanting to get better with a framework that will see Mike excel.
Channeling that frustration, is that something you've mentioned before, your good mates, you've chatted to him about?
I haven't been taking any of your bait yet this morning.
You've batted it away very well. You're in game mode already.
You're chipping away nicely. You're hoping that I'll crack.
I'm taking that as a yes.
Exactly. You're right.
Listen, very best of luck tomorrow. Really look forward to catching up with you again over the next few weeks. Thanks a million for hopping on.
See you next week, boys. Thank you.
Cheers. Ronan O'Gara on the line there ahead of fascinating weekend of, and like, look at it, he's obviously joking about it there, but why would you not? Well, one of your best mates is so highly thought of. Actually, what I was going to ask him was why is Mike Prendergast so special? But he answered it. Like, that's that ability that he's talking about. Like, it's got head coach material written all over it as well. Graham Roundtree just been appointed. They could have a very successful 20 years ahead, but it did strike me as he's that ability to channel your frustration and not be, what was the word he used? Not be stressed about it. It's incredible.
It's quite an elitist mindset against Graham Roundtree out there.
Jesus, wow. I'm really chipping away at the old Munster people this morning, haven't they?
Yeah, we all just...
That annoy you?
Hate you, yeah. Oh, really? Oh, my weekend has been ruined.
Well, it definitely rankled a bit. There was some people in touch here that were talking about
believe it.
P-Well74 on YouTube says, Owen, get out of Dublin and you might realise that not everyone's interested in the Champions Cup and the EPL. In the UK, obviously, there are far more people going to Munster hurling championship matches than are going to Munster rugby.
Like, I mean, he does make a point. Yeah, maybe. I just need to get out of this goddamn city. Go see the world. Go see the country. Speak to the people.
9:15. It is OTB AM, and we're delighted to have you along with us. We are brought to you every morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day, and the football pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue is hitting the road this summer. It's about 4 weeks away now. We want you to join us. First stop is going to be the Royal Theatre, Castlebar. It's Thursday, June the 2nd. Paddy and James and of course Tommy are going to dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football and the wider championship conversation as well. We'll see where we're at that point of the year as to exactly the runners and riders for the year ahead, and obviously all the usual football pod style stuff that you're well used to picking up on it. If you're not, you should get on it, and we'll also be sprinkling in the odd local legend or two. So that is the deal on the night. It's the football pod. It's Paddy and James. It's Castlebar. It's June the 2nd. Tickets are €20 plus booking fee. They're on sale now. You can head along to otbsports.com/events. It's the easiest place to get yourself to the ticketing link, or also keep an eye on our social channels where we'll tweet that out, and you can get yours today, and stay tuned for more details to come on that show. Up next, we're going to be rejoined by Will O'Callaghan, and joined for the first time this morning by middle-aged, mild-mannered Mick for an extremely exciting crappy quiz to see out the week. But first, during the ad break, you're going to hear a highlight from Nora Stapleton, Alison Miller and Fiona Hayes on how they started their rugby journey in Ireland. It's all in association with Vodafone, and it's proudly supporting the Irish women's rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The team of OTB are taking on a challenge that requires fitness, a challenge that demands months of training and preparation, a challenge that requires knowing when to push and when to focus on recovery. Triathlons aren't easy, but having a fitness coach helps.
Whoop are helping us non-athletes.
You need all the help you can get.
Yeah, as I was saying, helping us non-athletes feel like pros in our challenge to complete a triathlon this summer.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Whoop. Unlock your inner potential with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that provides you with actionable feedback on your sleep, training, recovery and health. Check out whoop.com for more.
The next game, though, France, is probably one of the highlights. And my biggest memory is coming in and going, ooh, there's a lot more people here. And even warming up and seeing cars driving down, seeing, before it was always you came to your matches and you can nearly see everybody in the crowd. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, there's such and such. And
you look at the crowd, Nora. I'm concentrating.
But just the noise of that game, you're like, there's a lot of people here.
That was such a tense game.
I was told to be a speed ramp. I was like, just let them over the top of you. You're going to be a speed ramp on the ground.
A whole day of tweaking our interior defence, how we were going to defend differently, so we could bring the big runners back in. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Now that you say it, we did change it up last minute, kind of, wasn't it?
And it did. It worked at the time. I just remember being like, God, I better remember how to do this in the game, but.
But it was good rugby though, wasn't it? It was good, there was good hits, there was good phases of play. It was like we spoke about the Wales probably and Scotland game not being that, and obviously England was really clinical, but I think France was definitely more physical than England, but I thought the phases of play went over and over again. So yeah, we knew we were champions, but I suppose the next goal was be the first Irish women's team to ever win a Grand Slam, and that was massive. Like that, I don't even think we started talking about that with people. We were like, we'll wait till it finishes before we even discuss this match. But we definitely had a goal in the back of our heads anyway, that was the way it had to be. It wasn't just good enough to win the Six Nations. We wanted to win all the games.
And I remember there was obviously very little media attention about any of the wins really, but I think there was a little bit of momentum starting to build after obviously that French game, and then we heard that there was going to be televised on television, which was a huge thing.
Flat out with the fake tan then we were, weren't we, for the telly. The first time I was like, God, these white legs are getting a bit of tan.
Paddy. I go, what? It was Paddy Andrews. I go, yeah. As he goes, this is James' house. He's upstairs. Will I get him?
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are bringing the show on the road. The first stop for Ireland's biggest and best GAA pod will be the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd, as Paddy, James, Tommy and special guests dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football, as well as getting stuck into the runners and riders for Championship 2022. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees and are on sale now. See otbsports.com/events for more.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, live crappy quiz on the way. You can catch that full video you saw in the ads there. Nora Stapleton, Alison Miller, Fiona Hayes as well. It'll be all across our social channels reflecting at the Grand Slam winner. It's a brilliant piece, brilliant production, all in association with Vodafone, proudly supporting the Irish women's rugby team. We all belong to the team of us, and stay tuned, as I said, to check out that full piece coming your way very shortly. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day. It is 10:30 this morning, a live football kickoff. Ger, Colm and David Connolly are going to mark a card ahead of the weekend's football. Jason Sherlock is the subject of OTB Gold from 1. Friday night racing with Ger and team from 3 today. Clyde Best, the West Ham legend, team 33 Gold from 4. And then Chris Waddle is OTB Gold from 6 today. So that is the schedule for the day ahead. You can just tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio, and of course listen to OTB AM as a radio show live every morning on OTB Sports Radio, and indeed on the OTB Sports app. At 23 minutes past 9, it is time, special time for live crappy quiz. Chris Waddle.
Oh, you're kidding me. September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know, it's not right.
Anybody else?
Leash, was it?
Like, that is one of the most stupid questions.
Darius Vassell?
Seriously, you all need to just stay quiet. This is getting really annoying doing this quiz.
What is going on here?
Welcome along to the shoutiest segment on Irish radio. It's the scintillating, it's the stupefying, it's the splendido crappy quiz. Every Friday we pit 3 of Team Off the Ball up against each other in a no-holds-barred quiz of sporting factoids at the end of the week. Allow me to welcome today's contestants. Our first contestant braved the elements last week to watch Westmeath win in the Leinster Championship in truly horrendous conditions, which involved a dreadful lack of selection in the glasses of red available at the tuck shop and a complete absence of pecorino cheese. A bag of Tato was emblematic of an all-round horrendous experience. Give it up for Adrian, who's your daddy, Barry.
Brilliant experience, Owen. I highly recommend it. Got ripped off for a couple of flags outside, $5 a pop. One of them had broke by the time we even get into the ground. But that notwithstanding, great day out.
The other one you can keep forever. Our next contestant is ready to get hurt again. He realises the world feels very 1995 right now, or maybe it's more 1997, or maybe it's 2013. He's constantly tapping his toe to Willie Clancy tunes and thinking of how proud he is of the Burren. Maybe Christy will write another song about us this year, he's thinking. It's Clare hurling fanatic APM, angry producer Mick.
Looking good, Owen. It's looking good.
You're very
We've
welcome.
even cast aside the football earlier in the season than normal just to go full on the chase for Liam this year.
I like it, it's admirable. A new moniker for angry producer Mick, I think, Adrian.
Middle-aged, mild-mannered Mick, I think, appropriate.
Like, I know, I don't know, I think you're saying a lot about my health by calling it middle-age, by calling me middle-aged, I don't know. Are you middle-aged before you're 40?
I think so. If you take that middle side, well, look at 35. Yeah, you probably are 30, 60, 90 if you work off that basis.
Okay, yeah. If you want to get my 3 score and 10, I suppose I'm past halfway.
Yeah. More on this in the Dadcast, I'm sure.
No, it's now defunct.
Right, okay, well, sorry to hear about that.
Do you know why it's defunct, though? Because they're all afraid that their kids might listen to the things they've been saying about them.
Yeah, as they should be. Dave McIntyre's kids.
That's true.
Well, absolutely.
They'll find out terrible things about themselves. Our final contestant cried into Hank's arms last Sunday when he saw the tension between his heroes, King Cody and King Henry. He asked why the world needs to be this way. Hank stared back blankly. Give it up for Will Rock and Roll O'Callaghan.
Morning, lads.
How are you getting on?
It was a nice little 15-minute break there while Rog was chatting about the weekend, and back we come. Not as Arthur this time. My defeat this year is entirely pushed onto him from a couple of weeks ago.
Absolutely. We did get a comment from Joseph Manning on last week's YouTube. And he said, Can we get Mick and Will on the same quiz one of the weeks? 2 of the best crappy quizzers the crappy quiz has seen. Would love to see them go head to head. Today is that week, Joseph. Sometimes dreams do come true. Adrian, he'd also like to see you, so you're very welcome as well.
I'm happy to be swapped out here anytime, by the way. Don't feel obliged on that you need to include me.
As ever, the format is a classic crappy quiz with a series of questions on a range of themes, and it's on to the slip and slide trivia, which is the rapid fire round. You can podcast a crappy quiz on otbsports.com or on the OTB Sports app, and if you're watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, even if you hate us. And you can send any questions you have via postcard to Crappy Quiz Quizmaster, Off the Ball Towers, Marconi House, Diggs Lane, Dublin 2, just like Merv Scanlon from Cork City did this week. Look at that beautiful puffin on the front of that postcard. A description on it: the Atlantic puffin can be found in colonies in many coastal locations around Ireland. One of the largest colonies can be found at the Cliffs of Moher, County Clare. It is all coming up Clare, Mick McCarthy. Puffins can also be found in other counties. I just want to put that out there, but apparently this one is a County Clare puffin. Thank you for your questions. We'll get to them later on. Round 1 is the boring questions round, never multiple choice. Adrian, you're first up. Nathan Collins has been nominated as April's Premier League Player of the Month, but can you name the last Irish player to win a Premier League Player of the Month award?
Oof. I can tell you what number he wears, then he is to. The last Irish player to win a Player of the Month. Premier League Player of the Month.
Yeah.
I do seem to remember, it is not my answer, but I do seem to remember Shane Long holding one of these trophies. Shane Long holding one of them.
If Catherine is going to do Jojo this morning.
Catherine, feel free to say, if at any point I say that's not my answer and it actually is, feel free to jump in with a ding, ding, ding.
Come on, Adrian, the football kickoff's at 10:30 here.
I was tempted to go for Seamus Coleman. I'm such a big fan. I'm going to go, though, with... I'm going to go with Shane Long.
No, it's not.
Robbie Keane?
It's Robbie Keane.
Oh, wow.
There's only been 3, hasn't there?
3, yeah. Robbie, Roy, and
the guy from Southampton. His name I can't remember.
Yeah, me
Shane
too.
Long.
Not Shane Long. Mick, can you name any team that has beaten Real Madrid in the European Cup / Champions League final?
Final. Liverpool.
Correct. Was it 1981? Something like that?
Yeah. In Paris.
Inter Milan and Benfica. Oh, yeah, of course, in Paris. Inter Milan and Benfica, the other teams you could have gone for there. Will, a non-Spanish or English team will win the Europa League for the first time in over a decade this year. Can you name the last club not from either of those countries to win the competition?
So either the Europa League or Champions League?
No, the Europa League.
Europa League.
Yeah.
That's a tough question.
So last non-English or Spanish team to win the Europa League. This is bloody tough, yeah. Porto?
Oh, correct.
Yeah. In Dublin.
Dublin, 2011.
A game I left early.
Oh, well. Seriously?
Yeah, I saw the goal. That was enough. That was an absolutely horrific final, Adrian. I had no investment in it whatsoever.
excuse.
I was given a ticket, I think, on the day of the game, and I wanted to beat the traffic and get home.
I mean, fair.
It's a Midlands
No
straight.
regrets.
Yeah. Round 2 is the Pass the Parcel of Doom round, but with a twist round. Yes, it's time for another round written by producer Colm, and this snappily titled round is sure to get the trivia juices flowing this morning. In this round, I'm going to name a number of years, and you have to guess the winner and runner-up of the competition of any one of these years. You will get 1 point for the correct winner and 1 point for the correct runner-up. Given the relative brain power in this quiz, I expect there to be no confusion whatsoever about the rules I've just explained.
Do we just say any competition? So just say, I'm going for the Heineken Cup this one.
So, Adrian, you're going to kick us off here. I think you'll all get a go at this. I don't know. I meant to check with Colm this morning if I'm completely ruining the rules of this quiz, but sure, look, let's go with it.
So
Adrian,
that's the design.
First up is All-Ireland Senior Hurling winners and runners-up from 1992, 2001, 2017...
What is happening
1986.
What's going on?
1989 or 1998. So you can pick any one of those years. Pick any one of those years.
I can't even remember those years.
Give me the winner and runner-up.
Stupid,
okay,
honestly.
listen closely. Pick one of these years. 1992, 2001, 2017, 1986, 1989, 1998. Pick one of those years.
What is this about?
One of those years and give me a hurling All-Ireland winner and runner-up from that year.
This is so stupid.
No, it's not. Give me one of those
I just
years.
have to give you one answer.
2 if you want the 2 points. You can give me one if you want just 1 point. It's up to you.
What? You tell me what the rules are.
Winner and runner-up, please.
You want both?
Yes.
You want both from one? You want me to pick a year?
Yes.
God, this is
It's not that
absolutely
hard.
ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous.
So this would be much easier if you just picked a year.
I'm going to go
That's
17.
Apparently I've completely messed this up.
That's not
17,
the
fine.
slightest bit surprising to me. And I'm going to go Galway and Waterford.
That's correct. Well done, Adrian Barry. He's got 2 points. He's in the lead. Okay, next up is Mick. You can pick one of those years.
I will go, just to annoy Will, I will go with 98 and go Offaly and Kilkenny.
Yes. Well done, Mick. And Will?
What other years are available here, Owen?
1992, 2001, 1986 and 1989.
Right, okay. 1989 is an easy one. Tip and Antrim.
Well done. See how easy that was, guys? You all got maximum
There's an
points.
odd number of things here, though, so somebody's going to... Anyway.
No. Then we're moving on to the next one. So, Mick, you're going to kick us off in this
confusing.
one. So for the for the same years, the years all reset. What I want is All Ireland Senior Football winners and runners up.
What are the years again?
Oh, for God's
I wrote them down and then I deleted them because I thought we were moving on to a new part of the quiz.
No, we got to be
Why
consistent.
are they not in
92,
order?
01. Exactly,
Adrian,
Mick.
Adrian
Another.
shouting me,
17.
shouting at me on air. Colm shouting at me in my ear.
86.
That ruined a stupid round, and we got
98.
Mick at home.
Give us
in
the
his
years,
loud
will you?
mic.
Come on.
1992, 2001, 2017, 1986, 1989, 1998. Mick goes first.
Why do they?
Why are they not in the right
exactly,
order?
It just
Like,
makes
at the
no
very
sense.
least.
I just copied and pasted from Colm's
It
email.
makes no sense.
And what's the...
What do you expect me to do?
competition?
Proofread the quiz?
Oh, it's ludicrous.
Football competition. Football, and you have to the same deal.
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. I will go with 92, Donegal and Dublin.
Correct. Will, you're next up. See how fun this is?
It's absolutely ludicrous.
Hold on. So 1998 was Galway and... No, hold on.
Oh, hang on a second. Hang about.
Galway and
You
Kildare?
committed to 98.
Correct. You reversed out of it, but he drove back in. Adrian?
17
Yeah.
was
When you pick a year, you have to go. Come on.
Dublin and Kerry.
Oh,
no!
Dublin and Mayo, one of the greatest games of all
Replay.
time. No, it wasn't. It was just one game,
No,
17.
the 1 point game, the best game. Sorry. Yeah.
Will, different years now, but the same idea
Oh,
for.
you're kidding me. What? Why are we suddenly now changing the years?
I don't know, but we're doing it because that's the fun part of it.
Normally,
a little
I'm
bit
serious.
of a curveball.
Let's not do this round again.
My
And we do
numbers
the
are
years in order.
Talk to Colm, just to take
It's
it up with
crazy
him.
stuff.
It's not my problem.
What are
Different,
the years?
different years, but the same idea for European
Oh, you
Champions
don't hear
Cup winners.
Bradley Walsh saying that I didn't write the questions on the chase. Come on, own it.
European Champions Cup winners and runners up from 2000, 2010. 2000. Why aren't these years in order?
So stupid.
2010, 2020, 2004, 2014,
Jesus.
2009. Okay. First up is Will. Please, Will. Let's go quickly here.
So hold on.
This is bad.
2000, 2010, 2020, 2004, 2014, 2009.
Yes, please. One of those years.
2009 is Leinster Northampton.
No.
So
not.
no, but
You get-
no.
Well, it's really, no, it's gone now. That's off
No,
the
it
table.
can't be gone.
It's
No,
gone.
no,
It's
it
off
can't
the
be
table.
gone.
It
That
is.
has to be
It's
still
off-
alive.
No, it's not. Okay, you can only give me the runner-up though. You can't get a point for the winner. So do you want to take 1 point?
Like possibly.
Also, I've just said it, so surely you can.
I didn't hear anything, but I have it written down in front of me here anyway. I'll take the point, Leicester.
Yeah, correct. Okay, and then
You.
Mick.
I'll take 2000.
Yeah,
and I'm worried about it. But I'm pretty sure that was Northampton and Munster.
correct. There we go. Mick is in the lead with 7 points. It's Will on 6 points. Adrian on 4 points. As we enter round 3, which is the actual past the parcel of doom
was,
round, back to normality, back to
even
some
bigger
good quality
shambles than
quizzing.
normal.
In this round, you give me a name that's on a list of names, and the parcel of doom passes on to the next contestant, who then has to give me a name. We will keep moving through the list until one of you gives me an incorrect answer, at which point that person will be eliminated. And then when 2 of you are eliminated, the last person standing gains a point. Shout out to Merv Scanlon from Cork City, the Puffin Postcard, who suggested this week's questions. Adrian, can you name a player on the list of the top 20 Premier League goal scorers of all time?
Yeah. Thierry Henry.
Correct. Okay. Mick, you're next.
Wayne Rooney.
Yeah. Will.
Alan Shearer.
Alan Shearer is correct. Adrian.
Harry Kane.
Harry Kane is correct. Mick.
Sergio Aguero.
Sergio Aguero is there.
Fernando Torres.
No. You're out, Will. Adrian.
Rude.
No. Ruud van Nistelrooy. Yeah. Not in the top 20. Mick
I meant
is-
Ruud van Persie.
the ones you didn't get: Nicholas Anelka, Andy Cole, Jermaine Defoe, Les Ferdinand, Robbie Fowler, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Stephen Gerrard, Robbie Keane, Frank Lampard, Michael Owen, Mo Salah, Teddy Sheringham, Robin van Persie, Jamie Vardy, and Dwight York. Mick, can you name a world snooker champion since and including 1982?
Yes. Dennis Taylor.
Dennis Taylor is correct. Will.
Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Ken Doherty.
Yeah.
Steve Davis.
Yeah.
Stephen Hendry.
Correct.
Mark Williams.
Yeah.
John Parrott.
Yeah.
John Higgins.
John Higgins. Yeah.
Mark Selby.
Mark Selby. Yeah.
Judd Trump.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Sean Murphy.
Yeah, that's correct.
Tony Drago.
No, that's Ronald Drago.
I had Trump. Mick, I had Trump is my last one.
Is it my go?
Yeah.
Peter Ebdon.
Peter Ebdon is correct.
Oh. I don't know if he won or just lost finals. This is a dodgy one. Graham Dott.
Graham Dodd is correct.
Great shout. Great shout.
Can't be many left on, is there?
4 left.
Did your man Bingham win one? Bingham.
Correct.
Stuart Bingham.
Stuart Bingham, yeah. 3 left. Will, can you get one?
Robertson.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Neil Robertson is a world
I
champion.
have no clue after this, so
There's
good luck,
two
mate.
left.
Okay. Oh no. 1982 it starts, is it?
Yeah.
Ray Reardon?
No, but there is one obvious one that you're missing.
Bill Warburnick.
Alex Higgins.
Oh, Higgins 182.
And Joe Johnson was the other name.
God, that was very well done by all three of us, let's say.
Will gets the point.
Only Drago. I completely eliminated all good answers you had.
Will, you're kicking us off on this one. Can you name a Formula 1 world champion since and including 1992?
Michael Schumacher.
Yes, that's correct. Adrian.
Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
Sebastian Vettel.
Yes, that's correct. Doing well here.
Damon Hill.
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso.
Correct.
Raikkonen.
Yeah.
Nigel Mansell.
Nigel Mansell, yeah. Sorry, I thought that was... I got himself and Damon Hill mixed up there for a sec. Correct.
Senna.
No.
93? Prost. I meant.
No.
Freudian slip. Yeah. No, Mick, sorry. Will.
I actually did mean
Prost.
Prost.
No, who's that?
Oh.
Yeah, it's Will next.
Can I go for Alan Prost then?
You can indeed. That would be correct.
Ludicrous.
Cheers, Mick.
David Coulthard.
No. Will gets the point. Will ties it up with Mick. They're on 8 points apiece.
I had Hakkinen.
Yeah, Hakkinen, Jensen Button, Nico Rosberg, and Jacques Villeneuve were the ones you didn't get. So, round 4 is the fun free magic number round. Contestants get 3 points for getting the number exactly right. If no one manages that, the nearest contestant who doesn't go bust gets 2 points. The second closest gets 1 point. I'm going to say that we can only accept the answer that's written on your paper, and I'm also going to have to ask for your pens once the music ends. So give us the following number. The number of World Snooker Championship titles now won by Ronnie O'Sullivan, plus the number of points the Dublin footballers conceded in their Leinster Championship opener against Wexford last week, plus the number of times Munster have played in a Heineken Cup quarter-final, plus the number of times Real Madrid have won the European Cup / Champions League. Your 30 seconds expire when Sinatra sings Bright Shiny Beats. So, the number of World Snooker Championship titles Ronnie O'Sullivan has won, the number of points Dublin footballers conceded last week in the Leinster Championship, the number of times Munster have played a Heineken Cup quarter-final, and how many times have Real Madrid won the Champions League / Champions League / European Cup. Okay, what have we got, Mick?
41.
41. Adrian?
35.
35.
I have a bad feeling I've gone bust. 44.
You have gone bust. Mick is closest. It's 42. Mick gets 2 points. Adrian gets 1 point.
Is it 18 for Munster?
It's 18 for Munster.
I had 17. I knew I had the rest of them right. Damn it.
So let's go through these. The number of World Snooker Championship titles won by Ronnie O'Sullivan is 7.
7, yeah.
The number of points Dublin footballers conceded is 4. Munster have played in 18 Heineken Cup quarter-finals, and Real Madrid have won the European
13.
Cup / Champions League 13 times. That's a total of 42, which brings Mick to 10 points. Willie, you're on 8 points. Adrian, you're on 5. Our final tonight will be decided in the round that separates the men from the boys, the Rodrigos from the Rod Littles. It's no team in particular, ridiculously easy rapid fire round. The score you get in this round will be added to your score in the previous round. I was in a hurry. There will be 40 seconds for everyone to answer from the same set of questions. We'll start with, as I say, Mick, then on to Will, then on to Adrian. If you get a question correct, I keep asking questions until you get one wrong. And then when you get one wrong, you get deducted a point, and I move on to the next person. So, Mick McCarthy, are you ready?
Let's go.
Your 40 seconds starts now. In what year did Cork last beat Kerry in the Munster Senior Football Championship?
2020.
Correct. Who is the Bournemouth manager?
Pass.
Too long. Scott Parker. Glenn Whelan is currently playing for what club, Will?
Fleetwood?
No, Bristol Rovers. Who was the last Real Madrid manager before this current Ancelotti stint, Adrian?
Zidane.
Correct. Jason Malumbi is currently signed to what club?
Wigan.
No, West Brom. What nationality is Luis Diaz, Mick?
Colombia.
Correct. Who are All-Ireland Club Football Champions? What did he say?
No, pass. Come on.
He passed, so that's -1.
Down.
So I think you're fine. That's you stay on 10 points because you got 2 correct, 2 wrong, and Will, you just got 1 wrong, so that brings you down to 7. So yeah, Mick, you are the winner.
What a terrible
Congratulations,
rapid
Mick
fire
McCarthy.
Kilcoo.
Kilcoo is correct. Yeah, you could have picked up the scraps.
3 in a row.
Yeah, we're all delighted for you. Do you have anything else to say?
That was my worst performance of the season so far. I kind of just went over the line on experience and nous and so on. So
so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Can we never have that second round ever again?
Honestly, I mean, I
didn't mind it.
Strongly suggest we never go back there again.
If we had the years in order, I think we would have liked it a little bit more.
It's we as you can hear, we're a workplace of great growth here and off the ball. We're not going to take Colm aside and say, listen, you could tweak this or tweak that. We're like, no, just never bring us a quiz round ever again, Colm.
Well, it'd be too awkward to say to him after the show because it'll get a bit sort of touchy. Whereas we can just say to him now while we're on air in public. It was brutal. Yeah. Let's never do it again.
There's glass between us. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social platforms. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and download the OTB Sports app to enjoy the latest and best in sports content and analysis. OTB AM back Monday morning, where Ger and myself will be joined by Anthony Moyes discussing the weekend's football, Alan Quinlan reviewing the Champions Cup quarter-finals, and Arsenal legend Paul Merson will be with us for a Premier League run-in chat and, of course, the performance rankings. Right now, to continue today's unofficial Cork special, we're leaving you with Mick Foley and Sarah O'Donovan chatting with Nathan about the current state of Cork GAA on last night's Off the Ball. Have a great weekend. We'll chat to you on Monday.
Whatever happened to Cork greatness? Football, hurling, it is really just not happening for them right now. Back-to-back defeats to Limerick and Clare to start the Munster Hurling Championship. So it looks like their wait for an All-Ireland hurling title will enter an 18th season. While on the football side, it is a decade since Cork last won a Munster title and just won All-Ireland in the last 30 years. And I don't think anyone's holding out much hope against Kerry at Porky Rin this weekend. To talk about what has been going wrong both with the current setup and also in recent times that have left Cork in this state, I'm joined in studio by former Cork Camogie All-Ireland winner Sarah O'Donovan.
Hi,
Nick. Sarah. And Sunday Times journalist and Cork man Mick Foley is on the line. Evening, Mick.
Hey Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm alright. So there's probably a couple of different conversations. There's the current Cork hurling team, and despite being All-Ireland finalists last year, just how far away they still are from finally getting back and winning Liam McCarthy, and also what's gone on over the last decade that has left them maybe so far off Limerick at this stage. Sarah, you were down watching Cork against Clare, and that almost provoked this piece because I think you were a bit shocked by what you saw from Cork.
I was, and I suppose I can't discount how good Clare were, and I will say that first. I don't think you'd have seen that from the clips that were played later in the week. Clare made Cork look so ordinary and unsure, and certainly didn't make them look like the All-Ireland finalists that were there last year. If anything, Clare looked like the team that could have troubled Limerick last year. They were so organised, they were so structured. I was saying to you earlier, 2 men go into a ruck, come out with the ball, and then there's a third guy waiting to pop the ball over the bar. That epitomised their first half. Cork were all at sea at 6s and 7s, couldn't figure out what was going on.
Mick, you had been talking ahead of the game about a leadership crisis, I think, on and off the pitch for Cork, and it seemed to come to fruition over those first 2 matches. It doesn't seem they learned any lessons from the All-Ireland defeat last year.
Well, it's difficult. I mean, when you think of, when Cork played Clare last year in the qualifiers, for example, right? That was a real sliding doors game for the championship. It was a game. If Clare had won that match and Tony Kelly had a chance in the last seconds to score a goal, and all things being equal, he would have scored it. But credit the keeper for making a great save. Cork win. They go on to play Dublin. They beat Dublin in All-Ireland quarter-final, and they beat Kilkenny to make the All-Ireland final last year. That could easily have been Clare. So, first off, there's not a whole lot between Clare and Cork. But then when you look at the gap that has developed in the last, when you look at the game the last day, I think generally speaking, I was at the Limerick match again. They had a great start, and they clearly had a game plan that they wanted to follow. As we know, it's a game plan that's on a knife edge. If it goes well, it goes really well. But if it doesn't go well, it's a struggle. And the issue that I would raise around leadership is that when things don't go well, Cork seem to fall back into their shell. It seems to be a very fragile group. It seems to be a group that, while I would say they have faith in what they're doing, when it goes wrong, there does seem to be a deficit in terms of, well, what do we do now? Physically, I think I know for a fact that the guys, after they played Limerick last year in the All-Ireland final, and look, the players have met Limerick numerous times in the last couple of years now, but it seems to be a continuing source of wonder to them, the physical difference between Limerick and Cork. And, that's an issue for Cork hurling for quite a while now. And it's a recurring issue when they don't play Limerick as well. So, there's an awful lot of stuff there that it's not going to get solved in a match or in a couple of weeks between games, It's a kind of systemic thing that's going on.
The physical side seems almost inexcusable, considering you just have to look at those Limerick players side by side with the Cork players and how much stronger and they look than their Cork counterparts. Is part of the issue that Cork have been relatively successful at under 20 level in recent years, and that doesn't always translate easily in terms of how players develop physically, that they're looking at the skill set that's required to win an under 20 title and thinking that's the same skill set and same physicality that's required to win an All-Ireland, where they're probably a million miles apart?
I agree.
Sorry, Sarah.
My understanding of it is that they've picked aesthetically the same type of player over and over and over, and have kind of, bar a couple of players, the likes of Shane Barrett maybe, or Damien Cahalane, who'd be considered bigger or more physical. We've a kind of a prototype of a player, and we've got 25 of them. And we haven't, and actually I know that the Dublin minor footballers, the same issue was there, in that they had developed the same type of player and then came up against I suppose different kind of players and didn't know how to adapt. And I think coaches have kind of gone into the mould of picking a prototype, having 25 of them, and not necessarily looking at bigger, more physical players across different age groups, and looking at lads who don't necessarily have the skill set or the hurling, but could win a high ball, or would be physical enough to stand next to a man, is essentially what Kerry O'Doherty is, Like you have to look at players where you want them to go. And I agree, I think they've gone for a prototype and they haven't deviated from it.
And in terms of the physical side, Mick, can you, if you, again, comparing them to Limerick, which is the obvious comparison we should be making if they want to get to that level, do Limerick pick a prototype and then, through strength and conditioning, develop them into whatever type of player they need them to be?
I think Limerick have benefited, from having, this particular generation have benefited from having a really, really good structure going back from when they were, teenagers, young fellas, and they've also had good school systems and so on and so forth. Now, Cork have elements of that as well. So, I think, and also, to be fair, there is a freakish element about Limerick in the sense that this is the greatest Limerick team of all time, right? And they have happened upon a handful of players that are freakishly brilliant hurlers and also freakishly physically strong. And they have built on that raw material. So to be fair, and I mean, this is the thing as well with Cork, and I'm not making excuses for them, but there was a little bit of a kerfuffle about Cork, the All-Star situation last year with Cork. And they probably didn't benefit from playing Limerick so often last year, and to start off again then against Limerick this time around. On one level, it was a good yardstick to see where they were at compared to last year, but on another level, if it went wrong like it did, it really throws them back. But I do think there's one more issue to that physicality aspect, and it's connected to another issue around Cork, which would be work rate. I would be fairly confident in saying that there are a number of players on that panel that just are not putting it in physically. They're not doing the work. And that's not to say, they should be pilloried for that. They seem to have made a choice that they're just not going to put it in.
And Mick, when you say that, because look, that in a way is as big a criticism, as big an accusation you can make around any player. When you say the work rate, do you feel that's in the off season, in training sessions, or do you feel it's just when they get on the pitch?
Well, I know that there are a couple of players that they have to work extremely hard on to get them to do the physical work, basically the gym stuff, I mean, all you have to do is, take off your top, and let's have, stand them up beside a Limerick guy and you'll see, and I mean, unfortunately, there are a couple like that just have not put in the work.
And is that not a failure of coaching, in that if there's players like that, why are they in the squad?
I think you can put together all the structures in the world. You can put the best coaches in there in the world. If a player has decided that he's going to do so much but not everything, what are you going to do? And there's a lot of guys. I mean, and this is, you can play around with it all you want, but there was a lot of talk within Cork and beyond Cork that it was a number of guys playing for their careers in the last couple of matches, and you see the outcome. So there is clearly an issue there around the attitude within the squad, within that's what I'm talking about, leadership. The leadership within the playing group, and then the ability of the management to connect with the players to bring the whole thing together. And again, I mean, you say it's a big criticism. It's a criticism. I don't think it's unfair. I mean, one of the things that has been said about over the previous 2 games is that they're just getting blown out of it. You know, I mean, there's been criticism of them struggling on their puck outs. There's been criticism of not putting the work. Like, work rate is not just a thing this year. I mean, there's been statistical analyses done over the last bunch of years to show that Cork, of the elite counties playing the Liam McCarthy Championship, are among the teams that are at the lower end of that scale in terms of, I suppose, the hook block tackle is kind of gone now, but that's sort of, the ruck balls, winning all that dirty stuff that you got to do to get the ball, to play the game that Cork are brilliantly capable of doing. There's no question about their skill levels. When Cork get into a game and when they have a spell, they can be devastatingly good. But it's earning the right to get to that stage seems to be the issue consistently with them. I will go back to that point, though. That Clare game last year was a sliding doors moment. Getting to the All-Ireland final last year possibly jumped Cork a couple of steps along further than they might have been. You know what I mean? So, it's also a team that's still finding its way. You look at the way the team is being put together, guys, there's issues in various positions. They're still looking for a fullback, a reliable fullback. They have a centre-back. Kieran Joyce, I think, is the guy, but they haven't nailed that down yet. There are issues in putting the team together as well. So the fact that they got to an All-Ireland final last year probably intensifies the glare more on them as well, when actually they're probably a team that are a couple of steps back from that.
I don't want to give the players a free pass, Sarah, but that's culture. Is that not a culture of a great team that Limerick have, that Dublin had, that Kilkenny had, that is set by management, that if players aren't quite literally pulling their weight, that they shouldn't be involved?
Look, I'm going back to Michael's point about looking for a full-back and looking for a centre-back and looking for a centre-forward. Who's looking? Because I don't think the current management team should be looking for those players. I don't think the current management team should be in this position this time next year. I think the current management team needs to go. I think they've had long enough with the group. The group hasn't made the changes that were required. They were incredibly passive the last day against Clare, and passive in the sense that they watched Clare play and win the game. And my issue is that they don't understand the effort that it takes to create a performance that entitles you to win a match. Now, Peter Duggan was in Australia for 2 years, and Peter Duggan was parachuted back into that Clare team, and Peter Duggan last Sunday understood perfectly the requirements that were required for his team to win that game. So I don't think that the players need more time. I think they need a different response and a different coach and different direction, and if they're not good enough, then they have to look somewhere else.
So in terms of the management team, obviously with Kieran Kingston leading it, Ger Cunningham and Christy O'Connor left the backroom team after 2021. Noel Furlong, Pal Mulcahy joined. Gary Keegan came in as performance coach. Dermot O'Sullivan is still involved in some way. Donal O'Grady is also still involved. Like, on the one hand, it's what you would say county should do, but maybe it feels quite old-fashioned that you have legends of the county involved at various different levels. Is that the right thing? Like what Sarah's saying there about needing new voices, a new management structure, who are the right people making those decisions? Is there a sense in Cork that actually maybe we need to start looking outside for a bit of expertise, Mick?
I think that, like, after the All-Ireland final last year, I think the pressure was on Kieran Kingston to shake up the management. I think that the guys he got in, I mean, to be fair, like, Noel Furlong has a very good record at underage level. Pat Mulcahy has a very good coaching record. Like, Gary Keegan comes in. I mean, Gary Keegan has been there previously with Cork and was considered a terrible loss when he left, and obviously has a terrific track record with other teams. So again, I go back to this thing that I'm not giving the manager a pass here. I'm not giving anybody a pass. I think everybody has things that they need to do better to try and bring each other closer together, that the whole thing clicks. But the management made the changes in terms of the backroom. It hasn't worked. Have the players made the changes? I'm sure some have. I'm not sure others have. Just look at the performances. So I would imagine that whether it's right or wrong, and it doesn't really matter. I think it's probably Kieran. This is probably the end of the road for his management anyway, unless they can somehow miraculously win an All-Ireland, which is not going to happen. So I would think, as Sarah said, they've had their time, and it kind of just hasn't worked out this particular year. They had their shot in the All-Ireland final, but the nature of that defeat was such that change had to occur within the management, and change had to be seen on the field. And to be fair, in the league, there was signs that, again, I go back to that work rate thing, that there was bits and pieces looked quite promising. But look, the hurling league is pretty much a sham, really, in terms of trying to read anything into it at all, when you have a proper league in the championship now. So, yeah, look, I think they've probably run out of road at this stage.
And just on the greater infrastructure around Cork hurling, you talk of Limerick developing players at a very young age. What is that infrastructure, and financially, with all that's gone on at Porky Queeve, how has that impacted on centres of excellence, been able to gather the best young players together and get them on strength and conditioning programmes, get them ready for potential senior hurling at a young age? Are those structures in place in Cork, Mick, as they are in other counties?
I think there's never a problem producing players in Cork, and I don't think the structures. I mean, look, the size of the county and the geographical spread and so on will mean that there's always work to be done. I mean, even with small kids, you're talking about driving an hour and a half sometimes to play games.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.